Well, a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Flight Deck to Sim live stream. Today it's the 28th of June 2023, 6 minutes past 3 in the afternoon. We're back in Microsoft Flight Simulator in the recently updated Boeing 787 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. But I've got a really special stream for you today. I've been streaming for something like 5 years. The channel's about 7 years old, and I've never really done any sort of collaboration stream. And those of you who are members of the channel, which most of you are here in chat today, will be very familiar with Mike 787. Now, Mike is a very good friend of mine. I've known him for nearly 20 years. We went to school together. We both went in our own ways with flight training. He ended up at one airline, I ended up in another, but he's flown far more aircraft than I have, the ERJ145, the 737NG like myself, but he's now a line first officer on the Boeing 787, and he has agreed to spend the afternoon with me live with you guys for you to ask any questions you might have about the 787 on a virtual sector from A to B. We are in a very wet and rainy Manchester, flying to Copenhagen, flight time around 1 hour 25 minutes. We're going to zoom on towards the aircraft very shortly, get Mike in here as well. He's going to say hello to you in chat as well. So it's just two fun friends, lads, just having a bit of banter. But he's going to show me how to fly this amazing aircraft. I don't know how many hours he's got in it, but he's been flying it for at least the last few years as well, because I don't really know how the 787 works. And it's a lot more fancier than the NG. Paul Hamilton, who's overall in charge of Mike today? Brendan, does Mike still fly the 7.3? I don't think he does. I think he's purely on the 7.8. Shuey's here, Lauren, Anthony Teals, Skittish, Trucker Boy 88, Lauren V2500, Peter Green, hope you're doing well. Do the wing flaps to take off? They don't. Caddy Butter, I'm sure he could, but we might do a shared cockpit in the future. He's just going to simply watch me live today and see how we get on as well. Alex Vanderpass, I see, yes, slight delay at the start there, just getting things all set up, then I realised I forgot to update the stream key there. But Mike is on Instagram. You can also find his YouTube channel as well. He might pop in chat a few times in text as well, but be sure to go check him out on Instagram and YouTube. Anyway, let's now pop ourselves here. I'll turn down the intro music and see if I can get Mike in here. We've tested all the audio. It should all be absolutely fine. Let's go now. Hello, Mike. Can you hear me?
Hello there. Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. I've just told everyone all about our 20 years. How long have we known each other? 20 years?
Oh yeah, certainly, definitely over 20 years, I'd say.
We went to Spalding Grammar School together. When I was doing my hour building, we did a few flights in the 150 and 152, and then, I mean, how long have you been on the 7.8 now?
I've been on the 7.8 since October 2018. That's
Okay.
when I finished my training then. Yeah, it's been a while. And I know you mentioned you didn't know how many hours. I've just pulled up my logbook actually. The 787 is now my most flown airplane. It was for quite some time.
Okay.
The Embraer 145. I have just shy of 1,500 hours actually, just solely on the 787.
Amazing. I mean, that's obviously got the pandemic in the middle of it all as well. So you've actually got quite a bit of experience. But you've not flown the 10, you were telling me. It's only the 8 and the 9.
That's correct. There's only very few operators around the world that actually have orders in or have actually got 10s on the line. I only fly the Dash 8 and the Dash 9.
Okay, very, very good. So, well, I really just jump into it, really. I'm going to jump into the cockpit now.
Let's do it.
Mike's going to have a look at chat, answer some questions that come up as well. Feel free to ask any if you do so wish to. And essentially, we're completely cold and dark. All I've done is load the fuel and payload, which Mike saw me do. I mean, how do we get this thing started? We just start with battery and GPU?
Yep, so it's basically just like the same as any other airplane. The theory is still the same. There's just a few differences in the 787 in terms of starting it. But yep, we always start with the ground power unit. If it's available, we'll select that. So select the forward and external power left and right ones.
Okay.
With that one and that one. So you'll see there's also the aft external power which is available. But normally on the line, on the ground, we don't have that connected. We only normally use I'd say normally, but I've never used it, but the aft external power is there as an option if we wanted to start the engines. And this is really interesting and cool feature about the 7.8 is that you can actually start the engines directly with a suitably powered, should I say, ground power unit. You would only need the APU. So yeah, as normal, we just use the forward external power left and right. We select those on, and then everything comes to life. And then if you have a look at the display units, they'll start coming to life, or should already be coming to life already.
Amazing. This update's really good. How they've actually improved the display of the icons. I mean, the Max has, I think, the same screens as you have in the 7.8, but the font looks really, really good and accurate there.
Yeah.
So once we've got some electrical power on, I mean, do you get the APU up and running nice and early, or are you noise conscious with this, or?
Yeah, well, a lot of the places we go to are very noise conscious, so we wouldn't start the APU on straight away from the get-go. And the reason being is obviously once the APU is running, it's obviously burning fuel, using a lot of, creating a lot of noise, and you can get fined, obviously, as you know, with the APU use. So more often than not, recently I've been finding that we get to the airplane and the APU is running because the engineers are on board, doing checks and various bits and pieces between sectors. So the APU tends to be running because of engineering use, but normally, if we wanted to keep it as normal, for today's sort of sector, we'd leave the APU until maybe like 15 minutes or so before we go.
Okay, cool. So I'm sort of thinking what I'd be doing next is nav light on. Do you essentially set up the overhead panel now straight away, or now we've got some electrical power, what would be next you'd be doing?
So this is where our two operators, I can tell, start to go off on different tangents. So at this point, so we've got the airplane lit up now. We got it powered up, and interestingly, once you do put on electric power on the 787, it does take a lot longer than it just did there in the sim for the powers to come up, because the 787 is essentially a massive server.
Okay.
And it's like if all the IT boffins and IT guys and girls in the chat, or if they think of just like a server rack, there's like two cabinets of server racks in the 787, a left cabinet and a right cabinet, and within those two big brains controls every single system of the airplane. And the first thing that comes up will be the captain's left display unit, and that tells us okay, that's the left cabinet. And then once both cabinets have fired up and are talking to each other, then that's when we get all the screens. So we'd wait until all the screens have lit up.
Amazing.
And then that's our go ahead then to know that the computer, I say in inverted commas, is ready for input. So then we would go in, and the first thing that we'd normally do, we do obviously our flight deck checks and stuff like that, check all the safety equipment, but obviously that's not going to be there. We can have a look around actually. If we have a look around in the flight deck, see where we're looking. So over your left hand shoulder there, you can see obviously the fire extinguisher, that's the fire gloves and the fire racks. We'd obviously check that they're all there. Then we'd also check that we've got the life jackets. There should be 4 life jackets in the aircraft component that'll be there yet behind the seats.
The first thing you can tell is so much cleaner than the NG. It's just still very nice looking, and well, this has obviously not been used. This desktop version looks very unused.
No. Yeah.
Awesome.
And the other thing we'd be checking for as well on the line is that we'd open up all the hatches and all those little compartments there, and we'd be opening them up just to check that there's nothing, no nasties left in there.
Yeah.
Mainly just to check that it's clean from the previous crew, but also as a security thing, we're just checking that there's nothing been left over. We do the same on the right hand side. Then if you have a look above you,
look at this. It's like a car,
yeah. There is plenty of space. And I'm a tall guy, and a lot of people still say, "Oh, how'd you fit in here? It's small in here." I said, "Actually, it's really big. You should have seen some of the airplanes I've flown before." But there's plenty of space in there. Now, if you have a look up on the ceiling, you'll see the overhead escape panel. That's our escape, because obviously the windows on the 787, they don't open.
I didn't know that at all.
And we've just got that external access. So because they don't open, our only way out in an emergency is through that top hatch. And there's a little step there to the right. We'd fold that down, so we'd step onto the jump seat, onto that step, open that panel, and then we'd pop out the roof. So we just check that sort of spongy, that's actually just a spongy sound thing that you can pull down with the red tab, and it exposes the hatch. But that's just like a foam insert, so that you can just pop in there, and it is definitely noticeable. If you're flying around without it, the wind noise is incredible.
Really?
With that, so we just basically, with the front of our fist, we just sort of lightly push against the red tab, because behind that red tab on the other side of the foam insert is like a catch that holds it in place. So we just make sure that's in place, and then above that the emergency descent devices, which are little handles on reels. So if you point up a little bit more, there's a little window. So that panel there,
Yeah.
on the right, this isn't quite accurate. There should be a little sort of one of those panels will be see-through, and there'll be like 4 handles, which are the red handles. They're emergency descent devices. Basically, when we step out of the top there through the emergency exit, we take one of those handles and we go out to an external step, and it gently descends us down. I do think the 747 has the same thing.
I mean, is that part of it there? Is that
that's it there. So yeah, you can actually, there's that sort of metal. I don't know why I'm pointing at my screen. No one can see that. But that metal sort of object there is so that if you can't, say for example, there's a dangerous item or something like that preventing you from sliding down on the left-hand side or the FO side, well, you want to slide down on the opposite side. So you basically try and pull yourself over to the side, and you use the emergency descent device to lower yourself on the other side of the aircraft.
So the same as the 7.3 and the flight, chucking the rope out the window and trying to get down that. That's the equivalent of this.
Yeah, but it's like a. I've never actually used it, of course, but there are videos online of what they're like, and it's like a big handle. You just hold on to the handle, and it just slowly sort of like lowers you down under the your own weight, and it controls your descent. And those are emergency descent devices. So as part of our checks, we check that they're all there, and obviously that there's 4 of them because there's 4 seats, 2 pilots and 2 jump seats. So if we had a full cockpit, there needs to be emergency equipment for all individuals.
Amazing.
That would be there. So we check that, and then obviously we also check through the tech log and all the usual bits and pieces like that, and then we go back to the CDU, which is the FMC. And what we can do is we can actually get our route downlinked from the company.
Well, I'm already jealous. I'm gonna I have to type in every time, and I think that's coming for this add-on. But at the moment, we are going to have to type it all in manually. Unfortunately.
So in this sort of scenario, I'd let you get around doing that. I'd be doing the walk around, so you'd be going through the CDU as you would. So what I would do there is obviously, in the com page, you'd be able to use some pages in the com page.
So this isn't
simulated.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
But in the com page, we can manage our CPDLC, ACARS, stuff like that. We'd find a company ACARS page, and then we would downlink by entering the flight number into the relevant line and date, put that away, send it off, and within about a minute or so, it'll come back with the entire route, and we would accept it in the route page as an uplink and accept it there. And then obviously, we can't just accept it and go. We'd obviously have to check it against our paperwork.
Amazing. So, well, what you would have done then, I'll have to do manually. Everyone in chat seems to be loving all these extra bits about what was essentially the safety inspection, I guess. That was awesome. There was a question someone asked, I think. It was aimed towards us. I mean, I'll let you answer this, Rez. Rezek said, how you've flown both, obviously, Mike, so it'll be far better for you to answer this. How does a plane like the 787 fly so quietly compared to the 737 or even a 777? I mean, how loud is it compared to the 73? I think he's trying to ask there.
Well, in terms of external noise, the 787 is much quieter, and that's purely in part to the wing design and the engines mainly. You've got these sort of chevroned rear part of the engines where they've sort of like got the jagged edges, and what that does compared to the NG, the triple, any other sort of more traditional older Boeing or any other engine type from any other manufacturer, is that blends the airflow out of the basically the jet efflux from the engine. It blends it with the static air around the engine, so it blends it nicely. The reason why jet engines are so loud is because of the shear between the jet efflux.
It's all the airflow, isn't it?
It's all the airflow. So because you've got so much shear from really, really high speed air coming out of the back of the jet engine, and the air around the jet engine is pretty much stagnant or static. It's basically through friction that causes all that noise. So what the chevroned engine nacelle design does is it blends the airflow together, reduces that shear, and that's why the engines, especially you see it on the Max as well. A lot of people think notes the same that the Max is so quiet. That's the whole reason behind that, is that it blends the airflow, reduces the shear, therefore reduces the noise.
Amazing. Now, I've flown the Max now. I've got about a couple of hundred hours on it, and I was surprised at how much quieter it is in comparison to the NG. And I just always thought that was down to the airflow over the fuselage and the nose. But I think a lot of it is, as you said, is just from the airflow from the rear of the engines. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. So next time anybody's out on a flight, either going on your holidays or on a commute, if you're sat sort of towards the lower, the rearmost half of the airplane, where it tends to be noisiest, if you're flying on a Max or a 7.8, you'll definitely notice.
Minimums approaching. Minimums.
Excellent. Liam's one of the members I think you know very well.
Yeah.
I was about to ask if you'd crashed it yet, but then I realised Mike was here, so I knew it would be all fine.
It's all okay, everyone. It's all okay.
So far, so good. Now, I've nearly finished inputting the route. You've actually flown to Copenhagen before, haven't you?
I have, yeah. So this actual route in my operator, we'll do this at the sort of, my operator sort of splits the year into half. So we have a winter season and a summer season. And we have a Nordic operation. So we tend to position airplanes around a lot because between the amount of places that we do route and the amount of bases we have, we'll do a lot of W patterns and stuff like that, and we'll position airplanes out for routes such as Copenhagen to Thailand and stuff like that, but the airplanes are coming from the UK. So this route would be something I would most likely do October. We'll take an airplane from Manchester, leave it out in Copenhagen, and it'll just go from Copenhagen back and forth to places like Cancun, Thailand, Vietnam, all that sort of nice, wonderful places.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think the last time I flew to Copenhagen, I think it was last year, doing a similar thing, taking an airplane out there.
Excellent. I have been there before, but not some time ago, and we don't go down a bit from my base now. But I think we're planning on 2-2 left later, but we'll see what the live weather's doing. Right, I've got the routing in. You explained to me just before the stream, your operator, you don't put the star in and you don't put the arrival runway in. So the flight plan terminates at Tudlow. So just like that, leave it like that, and we'll put it in later.
Exactly. Yeah, and the reasoning behind that is because. The reason why we don't put the star for the arrival airport in at this point in proceedings is because there is a glitch and there is a Boeing bulletin that basically advises against doing it, because there is a potential that LNAV will activate and do something spurious on the departure, and it's apparently to do with some of the coding in the FMC. So what we do is we'll leave the star out and we'll leave it blank as it is. Obviously the airplane will still know where it's going because it knows that it is going to Copenhagen. So what we'll do, we'll get into the cruise and we'll have what we call a cruise procedure, where we'll do everything like the setting up of the arrival, talk about, and brief it, talk it through, and go through the performance and all those other bits and pieces. So we'll get to that bit, once we get going, and then we'll just have to remember that obviously the star isn't on there. But the big clue is it'll be a straight magenta line from where we are to Copenhagen, and as we know, we'll have a look, and there's got to be some sort of kink in that line somewhere.
Perfect.
So,
we'll look at that.
But that's the reason.
Excellent. So
at that point, we'll activate. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll execute. Or we activate, brief, then execute after the briefing once we've confirmed the fuel and the route check's done. But shall I just activate that and execute it now?
You do, yeah, because if our philosophy is to never leave an execute button lit up.
Okay.
So we'd activate it, then execute it, and then if there were any problems with it, with the routing, either there was an incorrect waypoint or something in there that didn't quite add up, we would just modify it and then recheck it. So, what would happen is I'd have done the walk around, I'll come back in, you've set the route in there, you've obviously checked the route against what you've got on the OFP
Mhm.
and that it's entered incorrectly, then I would do that same thing again. So both pilots are then confident and happy that the route is in and correct, and you wouldn't be left with the situation, well, oh, you checked the route, why is it now going off in this direction? So
Yeah.
no, we're a crew, we've done it together. It's if there's something wrong, then we've both made that mistake.
Or be it on my head if we end up going
Yeah,
somewhere
yeah.
else.
Yeah.
Right, so we've got the routing in now. Do we do the
Yeah.
performance next, or shall we do some more on the overhead panel?
So what we normally do is in real life, again, we'd go into like the legs page, and you'd be able to, on the legs page, set the download the winds, or you'd enter the winds. So
spoil.
we can do that if you've got that.
I don't know if they can fetch the winds yet on this here.
So if you click, have a look and see. If you click on route data, bottom right there. So click on route data, line select, that one, yeah. That's where we would enter the wind, and then we'd click on one of those. So click on the one next to Sonic.
Okay.
So click on the line where the wind line on the right hand side.
So this is sort of similar to how we do it. We put the average wind in usually here. I don't know if this is model. Let me try it. So Sonic's, I'll get the wind at Sonic's waypoint. Where is it here?
Yeah.
Oh, no, actually, I'll just get the average wind.
Yeah, in real life, we'd be able to, just like getting the route, we'd also be able to download the entire winds for every waypoint, and this is what makes the 787 so fuel efficient and really, efficient airplane to fly a route, is because it can be told every wind along every waypoint, and it can work out perfect cruise performance for it. So entering the average is perfectly fine for the simulator, but to work out good climb, we'd put in a top of climb wind, and then we'd if we couldn't download the winds, then we'd manually enter the winds, and we'd forevermore keep trying to download the winds via ACARS because it works so much better.
Well, we are getting ACARS slowly but surely here. In fact, our newest Maxes have them. All we can do at the moment is grab the ATIS. But we'll have company contact functionality, and hopefully in time the ability to upload all the RINs on the route as well. Because we just put the average wind in and the descent winds. That's it. But I was able to enter the wind at Sonic, so it's the average wind. I'll leave that for now. And
that's a good example of what I would do next after the route. Then what would be next? Setting the departure and arrival on the depart page.
Done.
We've done that. Then we check the NavRad page. We just make sure that the
put this down here. Is there now? Oh, see, you see, we don't. So how do we get to this on here? Is that on here?
So that NavRad button on the FMC.
Yeah, found it.
So if you go NavRad. So on that page, NavRad, on the FMC itself, the CDU panel, that's where, so automatically already it knows that it's in Manchester, so it's tuned the nearest, it automatically knows, so it tunes the frequency and it's got the ident there as well. And if we wanted to, we could manually set a course for like a bearing to or radial from or whatever, if we wanted to navigate that way. Because obviously what the 737 has that the 787 does is a like course select knob on the panel, so we don't have that. So if we wanted to set a course, we've got to type it in, but we don't actually have to tune anything. we don't have to tune anything. We just select the arrival and it selects the ILS and I think for it. And what we'd normally do is, because we use the heads-up display, which I'll talk you through in a moment, we'd select a HUD. There's a regular departure, and then there's a HUD departure, which will use. So if you go on the departures and arrival page, I just want to see if it's simulated. So if you click on departures, arrivals, index.
Okay.
Select dep on EGCC dep. No, it's not there. So where you see runways on the right hand side, you'll have 23 left, 23 right. You'd have 05 left, 05 right, and one of them you wouldn't use. And then it would have a a dashed line underneath, and then it would say like HUD takeoff.
No way.
23 left, 2 there. And then basically that's for low vis takeoff. So we'd have on the heads-up display, we'd have centerline guidance to maintain the centerline in low visibility. And normally, if it's there to select a HUD, to be able to select a HUD takeoff, we'd select a HUD takeoff, unless there's a reason for not doing so, which is the ILS is not, or the localizer is offset of the runway line. We wouldn't select it then, because then the HUD takeoff guidance would be steering us off the runway.
Amazing.
So
HUD display on this seems okay. I think you were having a little look at it the other day, but I think
so. The reason why it's a little bit there is because obviously the seating position, Boeing have basically designed the cockpit, so they've stuck a heads-up display in it, and then they've built the cockpit around it. So if the actual textbook seating position, the heads-up display, the green bit with the FMAs at the top there, just basically fills the heads-up. So you kind of from that angle there, that tells me I'd be sat too far forward. So you'd move back a bit, and then you'd basically seat yourself so it's nice in the middle. So that looks great there. So
right, I'll save this. So hopefully,
that's your perfect HUD flying position there. Is that you've got you see the 2 green lines at the top? That'd be where your FMAs would be, and then you've got your altitude tape on the right. You've got your speed tape on the left. You've got your bugged altitude at the top of the altitude bar, and you've got your bugged speed at the top of the speed bar. And you've got your heading at the bottom, your altimeter setting, and your selected heading. And obviously those that are squared, they mirror the flags on the PFD. So literally the HUD is a mirror of what you see on the PFD.
Amazing. Really, really interesting. Right, that's awesome. I mean, I've used the HUD in the sim a few times in different aircraft. I just don't like it. I think it's just because I'm so used to having to look at the PFD. But we'll use that today then on takeoff and landing. Now, a quick question from myself. What's your minimum RVR for takeoff? Because you can lower it slightly with a heads-up display, I believe.
75 meters.
75, wow,
So this is the great thing about any aircraft that uses a heads-up display, not just the 787, the A350, things like that, where you'll see other airlines cancelling flights left, right, and centre just because the RVRs don't allow them to go. We'll be one of those guys that are going. It's great for us because the airport's all deadly quiet. Nobody's going. Well, we can still go. So
you're taxiing past me.
Exactly. So there you go. Obviously, the usual limitation is just taxi visibility is the main thing. We can land in 0 vis, but obviously nobody can do Cat 3C because you just can't see where you're going. But yeah, we can take off and land in 75 meters. So.
That's awesome.
Well, we can land in 0, but
wow. Well, we need 125. You see, and all your centerline lighting, usual stuff, and then 200 for Cat 3. So wow, very interesting. Right, well, I'll pop that away now. We've got the routing in. Should we do the performance next? Just get the FMA loaded.
We'll do the performance. We can do that.
So I'll go index perf. So I think you can just line select key these in the sim, and it'll add your exact weight. So I think 166.8, it was something like 50% loaded, or something like that. Fuel for the sector, we've got standard fuel, I think it was. Up my operator, we'd take 12.5 as a minimum. What would your minimum fuel be if it was 12.327 on the block here?
So what we do, we round it up to the nearest 100 as standard, but then obviously we then add a commander's sort of discretion amount of fuel. You don't want to take too much because it's too expensive, and then you're just burning it to carry it. And then obviously you don't want to take too little either. So at my operator, rarely would we round it up to that nearest 100. So we would take 12.4, and then we would link 12.4 and then any extra on top, because there'll be very few captains I fly with that, unless it's a perfectly gin clear day and you're going to a destination with many runways and there's perfect weather there, it's rare you'd actually fly with a captain that would be comfortable with taking 12.4, even just because the weather could be great there. So you never know what's going to happen en route. So I'd probably say 12.4. I'd probably take
I think with the
12.7, something like
yeah,
that.
well, with the fiddly slider system in Microsoft Flight Simulator, I could only get I got it to the closest, which it was 13.2. One less than that,
Oh.
it was less than that. So I think we've got extra 900 kilos, which I
Well,
think the
that's
weather's
great. Well,
fine.
that's fine.
We'll
Yeah.
take it. We'll take it. Now our alternate was Billund, 4503. So I'll put 4.6 here. I think we're cruising at 39,000 feet. Cost index, we've just gone with 30. Do you have a variable cost index or a fixed cost index,
Well,
Mike?
well, we tend to have the same cost indexes coming up most of the time, which tends to be something like 23 or so. And then depending on the situation, say for example we're delayed or we need to get somewhere, quite quickly because of delays or being short on hours. For example, we tend to fly to Cape Verde and back in one day with the 787 purely because it's achievable because of the higher Mach number that the 78 can do.
Yeah.
But some still, with that much faster speed, the duty day tends to still get quite tight. So we might request to our Go Center, who does our flight planning and stuff like that, oh, can you run us a flight plan with a high speed flight plan? And then you'll see one come down, and the cost index could be anything up to 300.
Wow.
Something, if we, base high speed flight plans, we have a cost index of 150. The last one I flew had 200, but the maximum I think is 300. But that's basically red line all the way at every phase of flight. So
well, we have
which you wouldn't want to do.
Sorry, go on, Mike. Sorry.
But you wouldn't want to do red
No.
line because you'd be watching it like a hawk the entire time.
Well, we have cost index 100 for curfews and things like that, which is I think in the 7.3 anything higher than 100 is the same anyway. But you're sort of climbing up at 10 knots below VMO and then right on MMO, and in descent as well it's the same. So we actually usually drop it by 10 or 15 knots or so just to make it sort of reasonable. Cool. So I've done that. I think next was performance. Now, I did ask you earlier about the performance here, but you don't have it for the Dash 10.
That's right.
I was just going to take an arbitrary figure or something.
Yeah, so basically what I'd elected to do was I ran our newest Dash 9 performance figures with the conditions that you had, and I sent you the screenshot. Do I still have the screenshot of that? Because this is something that we do on the line as well. We take screenshots of our performance figures and whatnot.
Okay.
No, I've not got the screenshot.
I think I've just grabbed it here. So yeah, that was DTO2 45 degrees.
Yeah. So basically what the OPT was telling us is we have what's called an optimum improved climb. And that's basically to save it a bit of extra fuel and get an improved climb rate for departure. It uses as much of the runway as possible. So to kind of fudge the numbers, so to speak, to make it work for a Dash 10, I was basically thinking, yeah, I'll run Dash 9 figures and then reduce the V1 by a few knots to account for, the larger airplane. But the thing is, the weight at what we're doing today is still quite light for 787 in general. So even using Dash 9 figures for the benefit of the sim, I think it'll be the same. But as we so discovered earlier when we were just having a quick chat with the engines, these are Rolls-Royce engines.
You don't have.
That I don't have, and I have never flown, and I only have performance for GE engines. So we'll just have to sort of make it up a little bit.
We've got this quoted figure of TPR, which is it's a Rolls-Royce thing, isn't it? EPR and TPR of 64.1 for takeoff, which that sounds very low, but I'm sure that's
it's a percentage. That's why it's. I think it's like a ratio rather than a percentage. So N1 is like a percentage, but it's a ratio. So that's why the numbers are all a bit slower. So I was saying, I think. I was explaining earlier about when I was doing my 787 course at Boeing, they'd given us their generic Boeing manual that included both engines, and we were reading it, thinking, oh, this is correct, blah, blah. And then we were like, well, our company only has G engines. And then the Boeing instructors realized, oh, crikey, we've given them the wrong manuals. We've given them our generic manuals rather than the company-specific General Electric manuals. So we read a little bit about them, and, for takeoff, when we set, on a normal 7.3, 7.8, we do the same thing. We set about 40% N1, and then we wait for stabilization, and then we hit toga and go. But with Rolls-Royce, well, they don't really work with N1 in Rolls-Royce. So like the Virgin Atlantic BA, they'll set 20 TPR and then go, but it's the same sort of place. So 20 on the TPR is the same roughly as where 40 would be on N1.
Okay.
And you just sort of at that sort of 4-5 o'clock position at the top there, and you set that, and then you pit toga, and then you go from there.
Awesome. Now so it's gone for this figure. We've got that set. Flaps then. What's sort of, do you use a variable flap system? Because we always use flap 5 in the NG and the max. What would be a good flap setting for us today?
At this weight, well, we'd normally just go with what the OPT would tell us. So based on that weight, I think it came up with
flap 5. I think it said on yours.
Yep, flap 5 is actually what we normally go with. Okay. So if we're a little bit heavier, going somewhere like Puerto Vallarta or Thailand, where we've got a lot of fuel, a lot of passengers, it's not rare to see flat 15s departures.
Okay, cool.
With the
now, just looking at these, these speeds quoted here, they're actually quite different to the ones on your OPT. They're actually a lot lower. Again, I don't know what the information is they're getting here in the sim, but probably isn't the most accurate one at this stage.
No, but for the benefit of the sim, I'd just say take what the FMC is giving you there.
We'll go with those then. V2 setting on the MCP.
Yep, we set V2 on the MCP.
Same as the NG then. So we'll do that now. 155. And what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, this trim setting, 4.5 units. That seems quite low or high on the nose end. I mean, you simply just match it here.
Yeah, that's what it's there. So yeah, it seems low, but for the 7.8, that's around about ballpark.
Okay.
Of whereabouts it is.
I think that's everything done in the CDU now. So what I'll do is, well, I guess we'll go on the overhead panel now, and you can tell me what to configure here, because this is where the 7.8 gets very different to the NG. You don't have bleed air system, do you? And the hydraulics run a little differently, I think. Is it electric brakes?
Yeah, the brakes are all electric. A lot of the stuff is electric. The wing anti-ice is electric, so that's just a heated up and just heats itself up. So, say for example, you're then ready on your side to. This is just a companyism. Say you've done your bits and pieces and you're happy and you're ready to go with the before pre-flight checklist and whatnot. You'd actually indicate to the other pilot that you've finished your side of your setup by lowering the heads-up display.
Oh wow!
So we do that to signal to each other that yep, my bits and pieces are done.
Okay.
So you'd lower your heads-up display, but then for the benefit of the fact that we're the overhead panel, we'd set the overhead panel as well. So we'll set the IRSs to go. That's actually something we would have done at the very first.
I think it only takes 10 seconds in this sim at the moment, so it doesn't really matter too much.
That's all right. Then. So we'll set the IRSs to go.
Yep.
And normally we'd have the battery would be off until we do the overhead panel. So we'd set the battery to on. So the external powers are all good. We leave the gens as they are. Wipers would be off. You can set the head brightness. You can. I'd be interested to see if that's actually similar. It is. All right. So
let's have a look if it actually changes the brightness. Where is it again?
Just there.
Yeah, it does seem to.
Oh, so it does. There you go. So it is very well simulated, actually.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, we'd modify that as you wanted to do. Then there's the flight deck door power. If it was like an empty sector, we could like leave it off. We'd leave it. But the problem with leaving it off is it presents an ICAS warning. But if we had like an empty sector, which was just pilots and cabin crew just positioning the airplane, we would leave the door unlocked and free, because the crew can just come and go as they pleased if they wanted to. But to get rid of any warnings, we'd then put the cautions, I should say. We'd put the flight deck door power on, put the emergency light, we'll flick that to on there, so close the guard so it arms them. Interphone off, that's correct. Passenger oxygen would be guarded. Window heat all on. They'd be obviously in up to clear the. Basically, we're looking for a dark overhead panel, just with any other Boeings. This stage, we wouldn't do anything with the hydraulics at this stage. We only set them before just before we start the engines with
Okay.
with a pre-start flow. Seat belts, if we finish fueling, we can put them on to seat belts on. And then the different settings there is on is obviously the belts are on. Auto would be on the ground, or they would come on if the oxygen masks dropped, or if you forgot to put the seat belts on, if you lowered the gear, they would come on.
Same
as
as the 7.3.
Yeah. So they do carry a lot of Boeing philosophy over from other types. So then there's the lighting and stuff below the passenger signs. So there's the storm light, dome light, master brightness. What we tend to do is we push the master brightness button on, and we just use that one knob to control everything.
Oh wow!
So yeah, so rather than searching around the flight deck for all these different knobs to control different lightings, we would just push that one in and just use master brightness.
That's right. This sort of stuff I know everyone in chat would be loving, because I would never even know there was a push on button there to control all of them. Just a quick reminder in chat, because we're quite busy here and Mike's going to helping me get everything set up. Questions we'll sort of leave until we get airborne. I did see Romulus coming in with a comment saying that you've replaced Jim, Mike, today. Our virtual FO. So did he get a good severance package?
Yeah, I think Jim's doing his annual sim. I think that's why I've been stepped in today, I believe.
That's it. But guys, when we get airborne, we've got a short time in the cruise, and I'm sure Mike will answer as many questions as possible. But I'm sure everyone is enjoying all these little tidbits. I certainly am. I'm learning loads.
Well, I could see one quick question I can answer there, because we're in that region of the overhead panel. There's a question there from Taylor asking, what does the storm button do? The storm button, I think, is the same as in the 7.3 as well. If you press that on, basically it makes all the flight deck lighting bright white. And so say if you're flying in the vicinity of lightning storms and stuff like that at night time, especially, to save you sort of being to save you from the strobe effect of the lightning that can disorientate you, or even effectively blind you temporarily, you press that button on, and by having all the lights up bright in the flight deck, it negates the outside external flashes, if you like, from the thunder and lightning. But as a normal in the cruise, even at night, we fly with a little bit of the dome light on, just for a bit of ambience. Sort of keeps us awake, because in the long deep night flights, overnight coming back, eastbound coming home across the Atlantic, flying through the night, if we had a dark cockpit, it would make us feel very tired. We keep a little bit of lighting on to control that. But yeah, so we'll make sure, carrying on, we'll make sure the landing lights are all off, and then we go up to the next part of the overhead panel. So that's all the maintenance stuff there. So when we get engineers on the airplane, they'll put the aircraft into a maintenance mode, where they'll turn that knob to maintenance enable, and then that changes the logic in a lot of the systems of the airplane. And basically, things that when it's in ground test norm, obviously the logic won't let pilots do certain things, because it's a lot of the systems will be like, well, there's no point in you wanting to do that because you're on the ground. Well, with the maintenance enable, a lot of the logics get overridden, because engineers need to do a lot of tests with certain systems, depending on what they're working on, of course. Where a logic might not let them do it. Obviously, the cargo fire switches, they're all normal and guarded.
I think none of this is modelled yet, unfortunately, so hopefully in time that will be.
Then the fuel panel, obviously, now here's the interesting thing, I've seen this simulator, so if you wanted to go ahead and start the APU.
Perfect.
So that's like that, it comes on, it says faults on the APU, that's realistic. And then obviously the left aft fuel pump is what powers the APU, because you can see there the pressure light went out. So that's another clue to know when your APU is on, is when that, and you didn't even press anything on the fuel panel, it's just automatic, so it comes on like that. So even though the left aft fuel pump switch is off because it's out, it's still on because in the background, because the APU is taking fuel feed from the left aft fuel pump. So that's normal. Then obviously centre pumps, they'll be off. We'd use the centre pumps if we had fuel in the centre on a long flight. But that
Do we
be
turn the
as
fuel
is.
pumps on now then, or should
Not
we?
at not at this stage. No.
Okay.
I'll show you when once we're ready to go.
Perfect.
Anti-ice, that can all go into auto.
And this is completely when you're in icing conditions, you don't need to turn this on. It just
No, only in the ground. On the ground, you'd have to turn the engine anti-ice on. So if it was, say, less than 10 degrees with the weather that it is outside the airplane now, then yeah, we would have engine anti-ice on for departure.
Okay.
And after engine start for taxi.
So much more automation than I'm used to. It's great, really.
Obviously, beacon we won't touch until we're ready to go. Logo we can turn on if it's night for a bit of advertising. Wing lights when it's those. Turn off lights. No, we don't want to blind the ground crew. Same with strobes and the taxi light. Obviously, taxi. Now, top right of the panel, we've got the humidification system. So the interesting thing about the humidification system, not a lot of airplanes have a humidification system. They also have a dehumidifier, but that's totally automated. So the humidification system, we leave it on. It's all automated. It comes on about, I think it comes on in the cruise after about 25,000 feet, about an hour, and comes off again about an hour to an hour and a half before arrival. So it comes on during the cruise because obviously the air gets quite dry. It's all to do with keeping the cabin at a reasonable sort of level of comfort, because the whole ethos behind the design of the 7-8 for passengers is to get the passengers to be able to arrive feeling more refreshed, because obviously the cabin altitude is a lot lower. Standard cabin altitudes, especially for the 7.3, is 8,000 feet. Well, it's 6,000 in the 7.8. So that 2,000 difference makes a lot of difference to the feeling of fatigue on a long haul flight. Because if you think not just my operator, but operators around the world, Qantas for example, fly this directly from London to Perth in one go.
A ridiculous duration, isn't it?
Yeah. So you don't want to be sat at 8,000 foot cabin altitude with dry air. So you've got systems like the humidification system that help keep comfort. And the dehumidification system, which I said is totally automated, is actually in the crown of the forward cabin. So it's in the overhead, the forward galley basically is where that is, but we have no control over that.
That's fascinating.
Cargo temp, we'd set that, say for example we're carrying what's called AVI, so dogs or anything that could potentially make a smell, or llamas in the forward hold. We would set the forward cargo flow to high, and we'd also set a temperature as well. Now at the moment, this is a thing where I think Asobo assumes that anything pointing up is set normal and off. That's actually going to command like a medium sort of temperature at that about 18 degrees. But normally that should actually, the cargo temp forward cargo AC knob should be to the 6 o'clock position to off. Okay. Unless you have anything in the cargo, obviously on the cargo docks, saying, you know, for example, we carried one of my last flights actually. We brought a dog back from I can't remember where it was, in the Med somewhere. I wish I could carry dogs. On the documents for it, there was a very nice remark saying, "Oh, please keep me, fairly cool temper." So we made sure that the dog wasn't too hot on the ground and also not too cold in the air. So we used that feature there.
Perfect.
Air conditioning panel we leave as it is. You can actually put the pack switches. This is what we do on the line. We'd put the pack switches on now. So click them in.
This recirc upper, would that be turned on as well, or?
Yeah, the recirc fans should be on, or auto, or as they are there. So we always have the recirc fans on the ground, unless we've got external air. If we've got external air, then the lower recirc fan will be off and the packs will be off, because you don't want it fighting. You don't want your pack and your recirc fans fighting the external air. Oh, wow. Pressurization, that's all set in auto. We don't touch that at all. It's all set because the 787 knows from the FMC, the CDU, knowing what
Your arrival airport
destination you set, yeah, it knows what the schedule is. So, like on the 73, you would set the altitude of the arrival airport. You don't have to do that. It knows automatically from what you set in the FMC.
Awesome. So,
and then the wipers, that's the same as below.
I don't know if the wipers
doing
actually work though. Unfortunately, I'll try it because I've actually not seen this in the rain. Yeah, I think it's just an animation, but they work,
right.
but they don't actually clear.
Don't actually clear that.
Bit useless.
Yeah, and then carrying on from there, obviously as I'm a first officer, I do this from the first officer side. The next thing I then look at is obviously the oxygen mask.
Yeah.
So I'd sweep from the oxygen mask as I test that. Then I could set my heaters if I wanted to. So I'd set them to low as they are.
Your heaters?
So
what?
The heaters.
What is
yeah,
this?
we got heaters. So that's obviously the onboard. So what you're looking directly at there, that's the steering tiller on the right there, and then you've got the onboard EFB on.
It's not modelled.
It's simulated or modelled. And then you've got our heaters. So we've got foot heat and shoulder heat. Shoulder heat is basically controlling the temperature of the air that comes out of the airflow vent.
This is ridiculous.
Underneath my side window. So you can actually feel it. So when I turn it high, if I'm getting a little bit cool at night on a long haul flight back, I can turn it high and I can actually feel the window starting to get a little bit warmer, and foot heat as well. Obviously, I can feel the airflow from above somewhere in the vicinity of the rudder pedals. Keeps it nice cool. And then the panel brightness, they might be simulated. I'd hope they would be. The amount of effort it never went into.
I think they are.
We can basically, it changes the contrast, so we can have a look with the weather radar on later. It changes the contrast.
Well, weather radars in Microsoft Flight Simulator do need to take with a bit of a pinch of salt.
Well, yeah, I saw that from the other stream we looked at. So,
we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Uros, I just want to say thanks to the gifted members as well. I have muted all alerts just for the setup here, but we'll turn those on later. Thank you very much. Mike will no doubt say hello to some of these guys as well in Discord too. Cheers, Mike.
Absolutely. So, getting rid of the column there. Then we've got the air data switches. We just check that they're in normal and auto. Then what we'd normally do, this flow would have been done before the performance, but I just wanted to get the CDU out of the way. So we would check that there'd be a no V-speed flag.
Yeah.
We'd check that obviously the QNH setting is correct. Check that obviously the altimeter matches roughly, is within limits of the field elevation.
Mm-hmm.
Check that everything else is normal. It always still makes me shudder that the PFD is the wrong way round. And
yes.
They've literally copy pasted.
Yeah, that screen.
That screen. It's you could at least.
Reverse it.
But I digress. Yes, but that's my biggest gripe with the default Microsoft. Is that the what we call the information strip, which has our call sign, frequency that we're live on, squawk, cell call, and call sign, along with the date, time, and elapsed time. That should be on the right hand side of the screen.
I have a question, because we have this on the Macs. Do you have anything that fills in this black screen here, or is that completely blank?
If we request any sort of, we'll get any sort of CPDLC messages will come up there.
Mm-hmm.
If we request the ATIS, digital ATIS, it will come up there as well. So that's where the information comes. That's why we call it the information strip. So not only the information of the flight, but information messages and stuff like that.
I'm really jealous. Everyone in chat's noticing my angst, because this got so many more features than the NG.
Yeah.
It is smart,
it's
isn't it?
pretty good. Then what I would do is next on the ND, I would use the little ND control switch to go into the menu of the ND.
So where's that? Is that this, or?
So if you look on the EFIS control panel would be on the 7.3, where you've got like MFD left, right, system, CDU, info, checklist, com, ND, ICAS. The ICAS button, basically you can choose which side you want the ICAS to be on, either left or right.
So on the Macs that's called transfer, and it's down here where the FMC is. So pilot flying has the engine instruments, pilot monitoring has the full ND. That's
the same for us. Yep. Some commanders, they get a bit protective of having their engine instruments, so they always think that something's going to go wrong all the time, so they like to be able to have it on their side. And if some commanders are in that way, and just let them have it. we've got big enough screens with plenty to share. So
Yeah.
we'll leave it as that. So then, yeah, I'll go into the menu. So if you, to the right of where that ICAS button was, on that control panel, you can actually click in the ND button where it says plan.
Yeah,
map,
I
menu.
don't think any of that is modelled, Mike.
Well,
No.
That's unfortunate, because the best part of the screens is within that button. But anyway, the menu should still be there. I think, can you click on the menu on the ND itself?
I can select ND. Is it actually the menu button where the little rotary knob is?
So yeah, we would turn it so that if you see where on the ND, you can see that plan is grey, but it's got a magenta outline box.
Yeah, here. I can
yeah,
select
there you
plan.
go. So you can select. So you should be able to, if you pop that screen back to map, for us, but you should be able to move that magenta outline box to where it says menu in the top right corner.
Oh, I don't think we can do that. I think you can only select it with your mouse, sort of thing.
Oh right, well that's fine. Yeah. So the menu here, I would select traffic TFC. That would bring up the traffic lines. Then I'd select airport APT.
Oh, this is cool.
That shows us the airports, and I'd also select VOR left and VOR right, and that's basically what I'd leave. If you selected something like WPT or STA should
Station.
or station, that will give you VORs, waypoints. Now the other thing you can select is data. Now that's helpful for us going across the Atlantic, because that will give us our ETAs over each waypoint. So if we're coming up to our oceanic entry point, we can just quickly see on the screen where what time the aircraft thinks it's going to be, and quickly see whether we're going to be within plus or minus 3 minutes of that.
So obviously with this add-on, I think they've just manipulated it so you can press. Obviously, it's not touch screen on the real thing, but instead of having to manipulate that, you can touch it in the sim.
Yeah, it simplifies it having it that way, to be honest. So that's probably why they've not simulated that.
Okay. So I'll do it on the other one, traffic, airport, and that should be fine. Cool.
Yeah. And the other thing, unfortunately, that we discovered isn't simulated is the VSDs, and that's another great feature of the 787 instrumentation, is that it shows you the VSD. But I guess my critical mind here is thinking is that maybe they've not simulated the VSD because they've not fully understood VNAV correctly, so therefore if they misunderstood it, the VSD would show all their misunderstanding, because it would be a weird and wonderful magenta line that doesn't make any sense. But that's just me being pedantic. But carrying on, what I would then carry on with my flow is that I would then in the checklist button, I would check that our checklist data info is correct for the model of aeroplane, which is simulated, and I'd reset all the checklists. So I click checklist reset, and then it should be there would be an option that comes up and says reset all, and that would basically, if the previous sector had used any non-normal ECL or electronic checklists, if they'd used any of those, or used all of the checklists all up to the secure one, by resetting all, that basically resets it all so that the next checklist, as it's got there, will be the pre-flight checklist. Because if I didn't do that and I press checklist, it would just bring up the secure checklist from the previous sector. So it puts us in the right place.
Do you carry a paper QRH? Was it all primarily done through the ICAS and this non-normal menu?
Primarily, we do it through that. We still carry a paper QRH just in case, and there's also some checklists that we would like. There's some emergency checklists, like the evacuation checklist, that is done off the bat, because obviously, as you know from the 7.3 evacuation checklist, if you go through that, you lose all your power. So there's no point doing the ECL, because you'll cut off your power and you'll lose the ECL.
Makes sense.
And there's another additional checklist that we have, which at the moment, through various regulatory issues, we're waiting for update, and from Boeing as well, update the ECL. So it takes, just like with any software, these checklists, they can be updated, but they take a little bit of time for the updates to get regulatory approval from the FAA, and then from all the other authorities, and then finally to filter down through the line. So sometimes sometimes it might actually be quicker to get a QRH checklist updated or modified. We'll use that primarily over the ECL. But I'd going back to the normal flow of things, I'd reset the checklist. go back to the CDU page. Then I would set the auto brake to RTO, and then I would go through the comms and the center pedestal panel.
I think this is modelled to a degree, but we're not on VATSIM today. But
no. I'll just do a quick talk through of what I'd look at. So obviously the captains. This is the tuning control panel, and basically because that's the captain's side, I'd just basically check that it wasn't off or broken or got any cracks in his screen. He can the captain can set that volume and set his frequencies as he wanted to. Then going down, the next one below that, that's the what's called the observers tuning audio control panel, ACP I should say. So you can select left, center, right radio, flight intercom, cabin intercom, PA, HF left, HF right, SATCOM 1 and 2, and then the speaker. And then obviously you can select to listen into the BORs if you really wanted to listen to them. There's no need to, because the
just remind you of the old times, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Listening into DDARs and dot dashes and stuff like that. So for the observer panel, I just check that that's all okay. And if there's only the two of you pilots, there's no much need to worry too much about the observers. But then you've got the engine fire extinguisher handles there. I'd make sure that they're pushed in, that the glide slope inhibit switch is blanked, that the transponder's off at the moment, all cancelled, covered. Center tuning and display panel, I'd make sure that's all okay and not switched off. Then I'd check the printer, that there's the power light or the test, and there's no fail light on the printer panel. So you can see there's like power, fail, paper, SLU, test. Basically, we can get ACARS load sheets sent to the it comes out there. There you go. So it comes out sort of underneath what looks like that phone. So at the back of there, it'll be a nice little whirring sound, and then you'll come up with an A4 sized piece of like fax paper from a fax machine, same paper. It's a very expensive paper as well, because
no doubt.
Obviously, it's to do with anything to do with aviation or airplane. It's got highly inflated paper, but you could probably buy it from, I don't know. Do you remember Dixon's?
Oh,
my
God.
dad. When we had a fax machine, we used to go to Dixon's every week and get fax paper from there. But it's the same material. It's the exact same paper. So we'd go from there, and then obviously I'd do my side. I'd set all my frequencies. So if you wanted to do that, see if it could let you do it. Set your Manchester frequencies, but obviously because you're the captain, you can do that on your side. I checked that. I'd set all there, and the good thing about the I can't remember if the 7th, the Dash 8, the NG has it where you can set like standby frequencies, so you can just easily
so you've got two frequencies. It's not that old, Mike.
All right, there we go. Well, there we go. The same thing. So you can actually set.
But it is
So
digital,
if I click next page on that page of the VHF frequencies, it would have a load of blank lines, and I can then on the standby page enter the next frequency. So for example, we'd have delivery and then ground, because we know that's who we're going to speak to next. Then if I click next page, I can then put
tower or something,
tower, the two tower frequencies, because we're going to be going off 23 left. We'd be speaking to like the what do you call it, like north, south runway, north runway frequency, and then if you can figure out which one you're using, you put the next departure frequency in there. So, and then all you'd have to do is where it says standby step up and down button on that panel, just press that button and it brings up the next one, and then you press transfer switch. So it saves you having to dial in loads of frequencies, and that's more of a thing that if you know, that's like local knowledge. Or if you can work out what all the frequencies are going to be, because a lot of the places we go to, you might just have an approach and a tower frequency, and that's it. So there's not much point. And then
that's cool.
If we're going transatlantic or down a Tango route, we just click the HF page and just check that it's actually tuning and there's no fault flags on the HF page of the tuning control panel. So if you go up to where the frequencies are on that display, if you just select HF, I wonder if it's not selected. And then the same, we check satellite, and then obviously the transponder. We'd get our clearance, we'd put in the transponder code in there, and then we would have it selected to above, because if we're about to depart and climb out, we'd have above selected to
Not
show all
modelled,
the traffic.
unfortunately.
Not modelled. But that's what we'd set. So, and then the weather radar, we alternate left and right weather radar sector to sector.
Where's
Radar.
where's the weather radar here? Is that
It's WXR, yeah. So you can select. Yeah, it's not simulated. So,
okay.
but yeah, we would select on odd flight numbers. We'd select the left and right for even flight numbers. And then
turning
once
it
we've
on.
done all that.
Sorry, I had a question about
And
the
then-
weather radar. Pushing this, is that? Oh, yeah. Well, obviously this is.
Yeah, that turns it on. So
Yeah.
pushing it there, that turns it on. There's a neat little trick actually with the 7.8. I don't know if it's modelled here, where if we selected through, so if you press terrain, I don't know if the terrain radar is modelled at all. But yeah,
I think it's a
it
bit
is, yeah.
funky
Yeah.
looking, but
So whatever you press on, so if you press weather or terrain on the top there, that then controls the main display. And now you've got terrain radar underneath your PFD. Now, if you wanted to, again, don't know if it's simulated, but we'll find out in a few seconds. If you click on the menu button of the ND and then select weather, no, it's not simulated. What you can actually do in the real airplane is you can have terrain radar on one and weather on the other.
Okay.
They've got full SA
That's pretty cool.
of terrain and weather. So obviously terrain being more of a factor closer in, you'd have terrain on the PFD, or what? That's what I would do. Have
As
terrain
opposed
on
to
the PFD.
one or the other.
Exactly, yeah. Because the PFD measures you up to 10 miles, gives you a 10-mile range, so you can see weather within 10 miles, but again terrain within 10 miles.
Amazing.
And then
cool.
and then that would be my pre-flight scan complete then, and then I'd obviously put my heads-up display down. Then we would go through performance and stuff like that. Then we would go through briefings and whatnot. But yeah, that's pretty much the airplane ready to go through the before start checklist, getting pushback and stuff like that. The APU's running, so we're starting to get in good shape for getting going.
Excellent. So, for the sake of this stream, we'll imagine we've briefed it. We're doing the the Sonics 1 Yankee departure. So, I mean, I know you won't be able to see this, Mike, but just for the benefit of those watching, this is the SID we're flying. Right turn, zoom out, then band Sonics, stopping at 5,000 feet. And I guess we'll let it level off at 5,000, see what it does. And I know you'll like to comment on its behaviour and how it's reacting in real life anyway. So, cool. I think we'll get it going then. So I think the tug's pretty much connected in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've got if I get that set up here, with Parks over on stand, what was it, 106. So
106.
if I push into the bell mouth here, let me get the jetway disconnected. Not that it was really connected, but just before the stream we tried to get it to connect. It's a bit of a leap of faith to get on board.
Quite literally.
Yeah, quite literally. And I think pushback. I think we'll pre-plan it here, and I'll push it to go in this direction. Now, Mike did tell me, I don't know if how long it'll take him to do, but he is planning on uploading some videos, aren't you, on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, eventually I will try and do so what my plan is to do is because obviously I've got Microsoft Flight Simulator Premium with the Dash 10 7.8, is I think now with this update that Asobo has done, there's still few bits and pieces where they can make improvements, but the standard that it is now, it's not quite study level there yet, but it's very accurate. It's accurate enough for me now that because the systems, a lot of the main systems are modeled, I can now do flow tutorials. And what I'm going to do is rather than make one large tutorial video of from cold and dark to shut down and do a flight in the middle, I'm going to try and divvy them up into short bite-sized chunks so that if you wanted to simulate the 787 at home, you can, and you wanted to struggle and you would think, right, and now how do I go from cold and dark? Could I then, I'll just do a short video, probably be like 2 minutes or so, just talking you through the actual cold and dark startup bit. Then there'll be another separate video for the next bit, pushback, whatnot, and so you can just go from a very quick series of videos to get yourself going at home.
Amazing. So for those guys who are asking in chat already, if you want to find Mike, he's on YouTube already. It's at Pilot Mike. It's in the video pinned comment. He's often here moderating as well and helping out. You can also find him on Instagram as well at Mike Sierra Charlie. So be sure to look out. I'm sure when Mike uploads them, I will share them as well. So just to say thanks. There you go. Look, Pod Mike's even jumped into chat to say hello. So you can actually click on that, subscribe, so when you're there, the videos will be ready to load there. Excellent. So I think we're all ready to go. So someone said, "Oh yeah, the flight directors are off." So
yeah. So at this point, the captain, as part of his pre-flight procedure, and before start procedure, after we'd done the performance, he'll go through his MCP setup. So we'll both have our flight directors on.
I think they're not independently modelled, unfortunately.
So okay, well we'll take that then, and then we'll have the auto. Make sure the auto throttles are armed. They're off, so they'll be armed. Then we'll have LNAV and VNAV selected for departure, or as per the pilot flying's discretion.
Yeah.
Because you might want to take off in heading, of which you just have VNAV selected. Then you would have obviously the departure. The heading would be the runway course, and then you've got your cleared altitude. So that's all selected. Everything that there.
And these are the correct FMAs, 2 togas.
Yeah, toga. Or you'd have, if we were doing heads up display, it would be HUD toga, but that's correct. And that looks exactly, that's the picture. That is the exact picture you want to see for the heads up display.
Okay,
cool.
Cool.
That's it, ready to go. So.
Excellent. So we're pretty much good now, are we? Have we just got to do the pushback release parking brake? Just the beacon.
What we'll do now is obviously we'd speak to the ground crew, get the airplane in position. So we would disconnect the ground power, so that would go away. Now it says available. Now when it says available, that's good, because that means that the electrical system logic, has taken the APU gen on buzz. It's booted the GPU gen off buzz, so now it's safe to disconnect. A lot of new guys to the line, especially from the 7.3, get a little bit confused because it's obviously a different.
I think it's
there's no blue light. There's no blue light. So when they see it and it says on, and they're about to go and give the guy the signal to disconnect, you're like, no, wait, because when it says on, that means no, the GPU is on buzz, because obviously there's no blue light or anything to indicate that so you have to. It does take you a little while, and it does take a little while for guys to be confident about disconnecting and switching the buzzes around, because it all happens automatically as well. So yeah,
just got to trust the system.
Yeah, the system works very well. Just got to believe in the So what we would check the ICAS. It would say APU running. Then I would look up at the electrical panel there, make sure it doesn't say on. It says available or nothing, and then I'd say, because a lot of the time we'll have a GPU plugged in and it's just a token gesture. It's not actually giving us any power, because the airplane system knows what it's doing. So yeah, you've cancelled recall there. That clears the ICAS. But yeah, then what we would do, we'd go through the before start procedure in my operator. So if we have a look at the top overhead panel, we'd set the hydraulics now. So there's a distinct order, and the order, it actually doesn't matter for the logic of the 787, but it does because of commonality with the 777. So obviously the 787 and the 777, they're a shared type rating, so the procedures try and match the two together.
Okay.
So for whatever reason the 777's hydraulic system logic has, the 787 has to copy it. So what we do is we go right electric switch, so that very far right knob on the hydraulic panel, the demand, we turn that to auto.
Okay.
Then the C1 to auto, then the C2 to auto, and then the left to auto. So it's slightly, so there's kind of like a bit of logic there, but it's not very logical.
Okay.
If you see what I mean. Because you're starting from right, you're going right to left, but you go right, then left 1, left 2, as in C1, C2, then left electric. So that's the hydraulics ready to go. Then the next thing we do, we put the fuel pumps on. So the aft, right forward, and the right aft, that's correct. And then at this point, like I said, if there was any fuel in the center, we'd put them on.
Yeah.
Say for example we put them on and there is no fuel in center, we would get the same ICAS caution. I think that there would be on well, not in the 7.3, but you'd get the master caution telling you fuel low center. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So that won't go away until you turn the center pumps on. So that's like that.
Okay.
And then we put the beacon on. Then we would clear the ICAS messages with the cancel recall button on the ICAS. So we'd clear them off. So if anything did go wrong during the pushback, we know that any message that comes up is something new, and it wouldn't be hidden. And if we click recall again, we're looking for. There should be a few others there as well, but it doesn't matter if we put to hydraulic. Something like we're looking for like heft, so it'd be hydraulic because the engines aren't on, but the hydraulic pumps are in auto. What the sim is telling me there is the sim is thinking that the hydraulic pumps are on, but because they're in auto, they should actually be off.
Because the engines aren't running.
There's exactly. So it would be the 4 that we're looking for is HEFT. That tells us that everything is normal. So we're looking for engine shutdown, fuel pressure, engine left and right, hydraulic, all 3 of them, and then T, which is transponder, because we have the transponder at this point in Manchester as well, and some airports they like to have you having your.
We'd move it to out off. Would you move this to out off as well?
You would go transponder, so XPDR is what we would set it to. That basically pings us up on their screen, so ready to go. And then we'd set the trim at that point. So the trim is already set. My little aid memoir for this procedure is have fun, be careful today, and that covers all of those.
Okay.
So hydraulic fuel, beacon. The C of careful is the cancel recall button, and today is trim.
You'll have to write that in the comments after.
That's
a good one.
That's what I do. I'll add it to my tutorial as like all my little acronyms.
The guys will love that.
But that's it, ready to go. So then we'd do the before start checklist or the pre-flight checklist if we haven't already done that, because we'd do the pre-flight checklist once we've noticed that each other has got the heads-up display down. So yeah, parking brake set. We've got a lot of that checklist, but that's the main thing. And then that's your before start check. So now the airplane is in a position to do the before start checklist.
Perfect. So passenger signs are on. MCP V2 set. Heading set to runway tracking the cleared altitude. Takeoff speeds are set. 41, 46, 55. Set on the MCP. Trim 4.5 units set. Taxi takeoff briefing completed. Beacon is on.
There we go, and then checklist complete. Now the interesting thing is the ECL has auto sensing logic, so if a switch is in the right place it goes green automatically. So if the trim on the checklist, the trim, it knows what trim setting it needs, and if it's matching it, that line of the checklist would already be green.
Oh wow, very clever.
Yeah, so it knows, and the same for, say for example we were doing the engine fire checklist or engine shutdown checklist, non-normal checklist. It once we've done the memory items for it, a lot of the actual electronic checklist is already completed and checked off, because it's already, all the switches from doing the memory items are already in the right place. So you just check it just checks that it's all correct.
That's really cool, and I love these sort of features where for example it knows the trim, so you've got to set it. That sort of is a massive the 737, there's nothing like this. You've got the takeoff config warning horn, but obviously your trim, as long as it's in the green band, it won't go off, so it could be still well out of trim, whereas this is actually ensuring that it's set exactly what it needs to be at. So
yeah,
very, very cool. Right, shall we start pushing back then? Are we pretty much all ready to go? And we can start both engines at once at this thing, can't we?
That is correct, yes.
That's,
so once
again,
we get out
incredible.
of the way and start moving, I'll explain the start flow a little bit better as we go.
So I think if I press request,
Cockpit to ground.
here we go.
This is ground. Stand by.
He's manoeuvring his tug. And you can see how much longer the 10 is. I mean, when you see the 800, it looks quite stumpy, doesn't it, compared to
it does, like this? Yeah. The Dash 8 is almost, dare I say it, ugly in comparison to some of the other ones. Now, I say ugly is is a powerful word even for me to call my own airplane ugly, but the thing is it does look stumpy, and the reason being is it's just the front. You can tell the difference between the Dash 10, the 9 and the 8 because of the number of windows forward of the number 2 door basically, and the wings. So obviously the Dash 10, you've got all those windows there, 2 lines of windows. I think the Dash 9 doesn't have as many.
So I'll turn it
Parking
down.
brakes are set.
Exactly.
You may lift.
Parking brake set. Lifting the aircraft.
It's all very good.
Yeah, it's all very realistic, the audio here.
Yeah,
Aaron
it
put
is,
it quite
really.
rightly. The Dash 8 does
We're
look
cleared
stubby.
for start and push.
Yeah, it does look stubby. The Dash
Okay,
9 looks
clear
great.
for
The
push
Dash
start.
10 looks very
Please release
nice.
parking brake.
Perfect. I'll just hold on. Here
Parking
we go.
brakes
I'll
are
release that.
released.
There we go.
Commencing pushback. You can start the engines in sequence.
It will start in the sequence.
There we are. We're moving.
Yeah. So, obviously Manchester has they all have their procedures as to when they can let you start engines and stuff like that. But I think for the benefit of sim, we can get cracking with the engine start. If you want,
And it's
if
as
you
simple
want.
as just moving these switches to start.
Yeah. So basically, what the captain would call in my company is like start right engine. So I'd like turn the engine starts knob to start.
Okay.
And then as soon as you've seen me click that and click it into start position,
Okay.
he'll go down and he will immediately go to the right fuel control cutoff switch.
Yeah.
And turn that to idle.
And there's
And then-
nothing you're waiting for. You're just doing it straight away.
You're not waiting for anything, and then you say start left engine. So I start left engine, put the start switch to left, and then do the same thing for the left engine, and that's it. And now you just watch the ICAS.
There you
Watch the
go.
engines.
That's ridiculous. So literally, you just move it. Well, I say ridiculous because obviously I'm checking all the parameters, my head to my oil pressure before I put fuel in. Here, you just move it to start, move the cutoff levers on, and then just monitor.
Yeah, exactly that. Because the engine is so the aircraft is so automated and monitors pretty much everything. If anything was going to go wrong, it would tell you that something had gone wrong. So it would pop up with the master caution horn would go off. You'd get a master caution on the ICAS, and if it was something to do with the auto start system, it tries 3 times, and if it can't get it going on the 3rd time, it goes auto start, and you basically put the fuel control switches to cut off.
Okay.
And then you go through the checklist, have a little chat as to why it's not started, and then there you go.
It's essentially an Airbus.
It's probably the most Airbus
Okay, pushback completed.
Boeing have
Please
made.
set your parking brake.
Parking brake set.
So
Parking
both
brake
engines
set.
are running
Boeing
there.
aircraft.
I'd be doing is while the captain is chatting with the ground crew, finishing off
Ground.
the
Startup is complete.
I'd have
You
a
may
look at the
disconnect.
top left
Roger. Good
electrical
engine start.
panel.
Clear to disconnect.
Mhm.
Signal at the
Yeah.
side.
I'd be
Have a
checking
good
that
flight.
all of the
Holding
amber
position
off
waiting for the visual.
buzz
Thank you
lights
and goodbye.
on the gens have gone off,
Yep.
and that means it's now safe to switch off the APU.
Okay. There's
So the
literally-
APU's now
that's
off. That's it, and now we're running off gen power. So sometimes I don't know if it simulated it because we weren't looking at it in time, but the logic happens here is obviously you might have caught it just there actually. The packs
I can hear it.
automatically
Yeah, I can
come
hear
off.
the airflow increasing.
Yeah, so the packs, during the engine start sequence, the packs come off automatically and they switch them back on. That's why you don't have to switch anything. You just switch them in auto as part of the pre-flight, before start scan, pre-flight scan, and the whole start sequence sorts it out itself. And then with the AC buzzes, they'll all start to come on buzz once the engines have started. One by one, they'll start to trickle online where the amber off warnings come off, and then once the last ones come off, then you go APU off. So my then after start sequence kicks in then, so I go APU off. Anti-ices I just touch to check that they're in auto.
Yeah.
You don't need them because it's not icing conditions. And then I rest my hand on the flap lever to await the commander's instruction to set the takeoff flap setting. So you would say
Flap 5 or something like that.
and then set and then set flap 5, and then I'd put it to flap 5.
Perfect.
And then that would be that bit. Then we would check the
Do the flight controls? Do you do a flight control check?
the captain. We get captain do the flight controls at that point.
Do that then. There's the rudders.
Yeah. Before we do the rudders on the line, though, we'd have to make sure that the pin was out and we'd seen that the pin was in. And you'd actually hold. There's a central button in the steering tiller, which is the you'd hold that in and then do the rudder test. Because what that button does, it disconnects the rudders from the steering, so you don't end up. Just in case you don't end up sort of moving the nose wheel steering as well as the rudder, so you're just testing the rudder.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, whereas on the 7.3 you just have to hold on to the tiller
Yeah.
tightly.
And then after the start is, so after he's done that, the captain's now rejoined me. He's now looking at the ICAS. He's looking at his engine instruments. Once I've checked and I've given him enough chance to see that he's looked at the engine instruments, I then blank them. So I click the eng button on the that's it. So that's the only ones we'd see. Obviously, because it's the Rolls-Royce, we've got the extra two. On the GE engines, we just have the N1 and EGT. We don't have EPR. And then I'd press cancel recall. I'd check the recall, and there should just be.
Seems okay.
Yep, blank. So that's fine. So there's nothing wrong. And then we'd do the before taxi checklist.
Amazing. So actual configuration change, switch-wise, is APU off and the flaps, and checking the flight controls. Isn't
Yep,
it? It's
that's
not.
it.
Whereas we're flicking and turning off and on.
Yeah, there's all these pat switches and bleed switches and yeah,
Brilliant.
goodness knows what I've now since promptly forgotten.
So anti-ice we did, recall, order brake to RTO, flight controls checked. Obviously the sim, we confirmed that ground equipment's clear and the APU is off. And next is before takeoff.
Yeah,
Just
so
simply
now
flaps.
we're basically simply flaps. So now we just
And for
Taxi
taxi, turn off and taxi?
normally just taxi.
Okay.
It's captain's discretion really. If he struggles to see the taxi lines in the turns, I'll probably have the turn offs for him as well.
Amazing. Right, so we'll release the parking brake. I mean, I guess there's no need to do any sort of config check here because the aircraft's just already
It's all
configured.
correct, yeah. Exactly.
So for the benefit of the viewers, we're going to taxi to 23 left. I've just got the chart here open for you. So we're going to go straight ahead here. We'll go Echo Delta Papa. We'll cross 23 right, and then we'll go Delta Zulu Tango full length for 23 left. So I'll do that here. Now taxiing here in the max with the leaps, you just release the parking brake and the aircraft starts moving. Is there enough power? Well, I mean, I know you don't have the Rolls-Royce the Trent 1000s, but with the GEs...
The aircraft naturally should start to roll with the brakes off. Now, that might take a long time if you've got a heavy flight, heavy airplane load at, say, 220 tons going across the Atlantic. So you might add a bit of power, maybe all the way up to 40% if you've got a slightly uphill apron.
Perfect.
To contend with.
Well, it's a typical Manchester day. Absolutely grotty. I think I don't actually know what the latest meta are saying, but it looks. I mean, in the sim, it looks like the visibility is less than sort of 1,000 meters here.
So yeah, if the temperature was 10 degrees or less, we'd definitely have the engine anti-ice on the taxi.
Perfect. Can you taxi on the left, on the right hand side at your operator, Mike, or do you have to? Is it captains only?
No, it's captains only. It's a legacy from older fleets, and I think it's a legacy from 75, 76, things like that. I know a lot of operators with the 787 allow British Airways, I know for one, and I think Virgin as well, allow first officers to taxi, but it's just. It's just a company rule basically, and it is monitored. So, for example, if an FO was to taxi and start using the tiller on the right-hand side, the monitoring systems would flag it that there was a taxi from the right-hand side.
Well, you need a type rating in itself to taxi in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It was it's very difficult to, and you've got a lot of random ground vehicles going all over the place. This is the Mako Simulations version of Manchester, but the taxiways look pretty realistic.
They are accurate, yeah. The only thing I did notice is that the hangar that did used to be the old Thomas Cook hangar now belongs to an engineering company called STS.
Okay.
So if they wanted to make an update, they need to
there it is,
get rid of the Thomas Cook logo. They put the STS logo, but they have it so that the Thomas Cook logo is just barely visible behind it because of the way they've put the paint is. It's almost like taking a picture off the wall after so long. It's left a shadow on the wall.
Well, I've just got a tip from someone flying. Dylan says move this in. Ah, look, you got a. I think that's just a Microsoft Flight Simulator thing, but do you have these on your NDs?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have that
space,
either on the Max, which I'd love to have this. But I think it's
Yeah,
I
we
think
have
it's
it.
just you'd have all the intersections and everything, wouldn't you, on this?
That's right. Yeah, you'd have the taxiways labelled in cyan, and the stands as well are labelled in cyan.
Wow, that's awesome. So what we'll
So
do...
looks like we've missed the rush hour of all the easy jets and whatnot.
It's pretty quiet here. Much quieter
Yeah, it
than
looks
than
like,
I'm used to. I did contemplate going on VATSIM, but I thought, you know, with everything you're telling us today and doing that online, I'm doing a bit too much. But as I said, Mike's going to be starting uploading some videos hopefully soon on YouTube, and hopefully he'll do some flights on VATSIM as well.
Yep. Like I say, yeah. Once I know what my schedule's like, and if I can fit in, and obviously, you know, going through the 7.8 to make a tutorial is fine, but it's obviously just the case of finding some editing software and some time to sit down, record it, and get it all together. That's the main thing.
Yeah. So there's Papa. So I think we'll stay on Papa all the way now until Delta Zulu.
Yep.
And then cross. Do you have a procedure for crossing an active runway as well?
Strobes on. Obviously, give a good look. Make sure the stop bar's out, and yeah, strobes on.
Perfect. It's pretty much the same as us.
Seen a question there. Which type from food test? Which type does pilot might prefer to fly? 7, 8, 9, 8, 9, or 10? I've never flown the 10. My company doesn't have the Dash 10. I prefer flying the Dash 9 because it's slightly bigger, more inertia. There's it's less susceptible to updrafts and stuff like that, and you know, gusts and whatnot, because it's normally a little bit heavier. But otherwise, because of the fly-by-wire, they all fly the same. It's just like I say, the inertia. The fly-by-wire can't do anything about inertia. So they all handle the same in terms of if you're flying a empty Dash 8 or a heavy Dash 9, the control inputs are exactly the same. That's the main thing with fly-by-wire. The control inputs are the same. It's just the responsiveness of the inertia of the airplane that changes.
And how does that feel with the yoke? I mean, does it still feel like flying a large 7.3 or?
It doesn't feel like a 7.3 at all, because
Really?
like I say, it's fly-by-wire. It feels like its own thing. A lot of guys say, especially I think Air Force guys in the company, say it flies like a fighter.
Really?
Because it is actually that responsive. You know, you really need to be careful with over controlling the 787. And again, guys that are new to type, just out of the sim, or you know, it takes a good few sessions in the sim to go from not, you know, from flying something that isn't fly-by-wire, especially going from the 7.3 to the 7.8, getting used to the distinct lack of control input you need to put into this thing is, you know, it takes a little while to get used to. But then once you're used to it, it's yeah, you're a very delicate flyer then.
Pedro asked, does anyone know how they're flying? Are they in the same room? No. We're on a Discord voice call, but we might look at shared cockpit in the future to see how that works. That could be quite amusing if we go to some challenging places.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right, so
we'll have to remember our positions in terms of CRM, won't we?
Yeah, we will do. I'll keep reminding you. Don't worry. Right, so we're at the whole point now, Mike.
Yeah.
So I mean, crack on. Yeah. Tell me.
What we'd do now is obviously we'd say we'd get takeoff clearance. At that point, we'd have done the taxiing to the runway. We'd have just had a quick chat, any changes or whatnot to our takeoff brief. Nope, okay. The captain would call for the takeoff checklist. Before that, of course, we'd get a automated cabin ready message on the ICAS.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically done from, so the cabin manager, or our number one, keys in on the handset a key code, which then basically tells us that the cabin is ready and secure for takeoff. And then it comes up with ding, information message, cabin ready. So we'll say to each other, yep, we've seen the cabin ready message, so we're all ready to go. That gives us clearance to then do the takeoff checklist. Then do the takeoff checklist, which
I did. It was just flaps, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So because obviously the flaps are in the correct position, that would obviously be green. So because the there's nothing then to call out. If the checklist is all green, there's nothing to call out. So we would literally just say takeoff checklist complete. And then the captain would confirm, because I'm calling it out, the captain would then confirm that he's then seen that the takeoff checklist is complete. So we don't just take one guy's word for it that the checklist was completed. Both guys have to check. So for takeoff checklist and landing checklist, both guys have to confirm that they've seen that it is actually complete. So you have to wait for the other guy to confirm that he's seen that the checklist has been completed.
Oh, cool.
Then what we do, we'd zoom out on the ND range so that we can see something useful. So like the first turn, something like that. Maybe put the weather radar on or terrain radar, depending on what we'd like. And then obviously we'd have the.
I think we might turn the weather radar off just for my.
Yeah, it's a bit distracting, that one, isn't it? So yeah, but like I say, we'd have the weather radar on, especially if this was in real life flying conditions. We would definitely have the weather radar on, and perhaps take a little bit of time on the line, as you would on the line, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Just to have a look, see that you're not going to take off into anything nasty.
Yeah.
And then obviously we'd have the strobes on again, the takeoff lights on. Now, interestingly, what we do for the takeoff lighting, we just have the left and right on. We don't have the turn off. We just leave the nose landing light off.
So just
and
these?
the right one on.
Okay.
Yeah, just those, yeah. So we just use those.
Interesting.
Strobes as well. And the transponder to TARA.
Perfect.
And then that's the airplane ready to go.
Right then, and then it's as simple as just pushing toga and following
Yep,
the flight
so-
direction and rotation.
Yeah, like I said, with the Rolls-Royce Trents on this, you just put them to 20 TPR. I think that's the only
Okay.
thing I know about the Rolls-Royces. You put them to 20 TPR, hit toga, then go. Obviously for the GEs, the normal engines, I'd say 40%. Wait for stabilisation, then hit toga.
Perfect. I'll try and do it there. I think the engine spool up time I was commenting with you earlier is very slow in this. Anything, feel free during the takeoff roll to call out anything that you think's a bit funky, and then we'll leave it. It's meant to be 5,000 feet here. I think the stop altitude. We'll let it level off at 5,000, and then you can comment on how it reacted and anything that looked unusual there. We'll give it a go.
Yeah.
Right.
No worries.
If you see anything unusual, don't forget to call stop as well. Right, and the
Will do.
timer's all automatic, so I don't need to
Time
worry
is all
about that.
automatic. Yeah, elapsed time is all based on the weight and wheels. So.
Perfect. Right, let's do it. So 20% TPR. It's about there. I'll put on the yoke cam so people can see what's going on here as well. I'll push toga. Oh, it's a click spot's a bit tricky. There we are. Set takeoff thrust. So you can see the engines are still spooling up. Still hasn't set it yet. I think it's about there now. 64. There we go. So 80 knots.
Check.
There we are. It doesn't call rotate.
Rotate.
There we go.
So your EM would call rotate. There you go. HUD symbology changes. So with the HUD, you put the airplane symbol on the dash line. The airplane symbol is the V.
Like that.
So yeah, bit lower, bit lower. There you go. And then once it disappears all together like that, then you go to following the flight director. So what you want to do is put the flight path vector on the flight director. The flight director is the little circle ball.
Yeah.
And the flight path vector is the circle with the wings.
Okay. If I'm perfectly honest, I'm looking at the PFD.
There you go. Yeah. But what you'll find is if you fly the heads-up display flight director picture, you'll be bob on the PFD.
Really?
You'll be so accurate on it.
Okay, I'm looking. Right, I'm really working on that now on the flight path vector. So it's already accelerated to 235, so I should start flap retraction. Flap one.
No, got it. And it's accelerating towards flaps up, so I would also call flaps up as well.
We're on that turn now. So what's your general consensus on the HUD symbology and how it looks?
It's perfect.
Really?
It's the only other thing I can think of is what we can look at later is if we try and look at the decluttered mode. If that's stimulated, then it's great.
Right, I'm not flying very accurately here. Oh look, the PLIs have just appeared on the PFD. The flight director seemed quite sensitive Oh,
It is. It does look quite sensitive there to me, to be honest. So
It's,
that's speed being at half, 1,000 foot to level off, I'd say. And then obviously for your own benefit, if by all means, if you start to struggle with the heads-up display because it's new to you, then
I'll level off.
revert to type.
Or level off here. I am primarily trying to look at the heads-up display and get the dot in the FPV vector. But it feels like a video game. Doing that.
Yeah.
Way. Right.
Let's
well,
still have a
there's.
fight.
I'll get the autopilot now in just to lower my workload, which is here. Oops. Well, yeah. Make sure you're in trim and on flight director, ladies and gentlemen, as well. Oops. Yeah, that's yeah. It's not my line check, thankfully.
That's fine. Okay.
I'll let it sort itself out. Get up to 5,000.
You might need to alt intervene or
okay.
just to get it going again into. It looks like it's doing it its own, but it's climbing up there steadily.
There we are.
Yeah, because there you go. So now it's going to get you back up there.
There we are. So we'll let it level off. So you sort of see it's sort of the flight director's going off and it's sort of lagging slightly behind it, but it does, once it's on it, follow it quite accurately, and it seems to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I did not give it the best conditions. I was out of trim there slightly, so when I chucked the autopilot in, we were descending, but it does seem to recover nicely.
Well,
that's cool.
that's about right. Yeah, so that's the picture there. So as we're level here at 5,000, so obviously I could just explain quickly the HUD symbology there.
Please.
So like I say, on the horizon line, you've got the flight path vector. The flight path vector is what I say is like the circle with the wing. That's, what that is pointing at is what the airplane, is going to hit basically. So you want to aim that, and it's really good for flying visual maneuvers as well, because you just point that, and especially on landing, as long as that is aiming at the touchdown point, the airplane is going to make the touchdown point. And then the circle within that, the flight director itself, is actually the other smaller circle inside the heads-up display. The flight path vector. So the autopilot can follow the real life plane can follow it a bit more accurately than this, where it just basically looks like a smaller circle within a bigger circle. And then the other symbol, so you see in real life that wouldn't happen. The airplane is on the flight director constantly.
So it keeps that circle in the FPV at all times.
Exactly. It flies it so well. The autopilot is so good on this thing at following the flight director. That wouldn't happen. That would be odd.
So
and then the other symbol. So the other symbol above the flight path thing, that's actually the aircraft symbol. So on takeoff, what I was very quickly trying to sort of describe, because I wasn't sure whether the symbology would change accurately or not, is that you get a dashed line, and that's the toga reference line. So what you want to do on the rotation is you'll rotate towards your 15 degrees, similar rotation style to a 7.3. You rotate normally, and you want to then put the aircraft symbol, which again is the straight one with the kink in it, the notch, onto the dashed toga reference line, and then you hold that there. And then once the dashed line disappears and you've noticed the HUD symbology changes, then that's when you'd start following the flight director with your flight path vector. So you transfer from going from the airplane symbol, the toga reference line, to the flight director and the flight path vector, and that's how you do a takeoff with the heads-up display.
That's amazing. So much information there, Mike. Cheers. I mean, I've learned so much about this. I mean, when you transitioned from the 7.3 onto the 7.8, how long did it take you to get used to having to fly with a heads-up display? Because I've always looked at heads-up display on an aeroplane and not liked it. I've always sort of resorted to looking at flight directors on the PFD.
Naturally, it does take a little bit of time, because naturally you always want to look at what's comfortable, which is looking at the PFD, and you will find that stuff. And it's almost like the Boeing instructors kind of felt like they were grabbing your head and holding your head up so that you could, because they were encouraging you so much. Because Boeing is when it comes to the 787, Boeing are so proud about the heads-up display. They're like, use it all the time. Why would you not use it? So even their instructors are like, no, you got to look at it. Just look at it. Just get used to it.
Yeah.
So it gives you so much information. You get so much good situational awareness by using it, because you're looking out. It's really helpful as well at night flying across the Atlantic where you've got no external reference to the outside. If there's no full moon, if there's no stars visible, if there's no you can't see where the sky meets the sea and it's all dark and black and everything. You don't know where to look, and it'd be very easy in an upset situation to lose references. So the heads-up display is what's going to save you if that situation happened. Because it's going to tell you how fast you're going, how high you are, what your vertical speed is, what your vector is, your flight path vector, and what your attitude is, and how many degrees nose up and nose down, all in one bit. Whereas obviously if you went back to steam gauge, non-EFIS flight decks, you'd have to scan 6 or 7 instruments. You'd have to, and on the PFD, you're looking at it. You have to scan. You have to move your eye around the PFD. But normally, if I'm flying the HUD, I'm just getting all of that information within my peripheral vision, looking at one bit. And like I say, it does take a little while, but it's only through the training course. You'll get used to it within a type rating, and so once you come to the line, you'll be confident using the HUD.
That's super. Right, still at 5,000 feet on the Sonics 1 Yankee. I'll just grab the chart for the guys as well. So you can see we have to maintain, if it's very busy, Sonics to 5,000 feet. But we'll climb now. We might as well go straight up to our cruise level, unless you wanted. Did you want to monitor any of its behaviour on the climb, Mike, or see how it was?
No, you can go ahead. Yeah, just run the flight as you would now, and I'll just point out any differences I see.
Perfect. We'll go straight up to the cruise level then, 390. I'll push it in, so it is a bit Airbusy in that regard. And then the FMAs here, thrust ref. Well, no, we're going to use the heads-up display, aren't we? Thrust reference and VNAV speed. So that's obviously pitching. Now that seems quite aggressive to me.
It's because they're. That is what are we doing there? Nearly 6,000 feet per minute up. Yeah, we are. I do think the inertia could do with a little bit of work on the sim, because we saw this last time when you did it the other day. That even in the descent, we're using a bit of speed brake to control the speed, and it was doing like 7,000 feet per minute down.
Yeah,
that's not accurate. This climb rate. I guess because it's fairly light, we're only doing Copenhagen sector, could be something to do with that. So it might be worth another, just visiting what the aircraft performance is like in the sim with a full max takeoff weight, just to see what it's like on the performance there.
So just broken up the cloud now, it looks great.
Yeah, it does look good. Yeah, so there we go. And the heads-up display. The interesting thing with the lighting, when you leave, there's 2 modes on the heads-up display control panel. With the brightness. If you pull it out, it's manual brightness, so you can set it as bright as you like or as dim as you like. If you leave it pushed in, from the brightness that you set, when you push it in, it resets like your normal, so your preferred brightness, and then it automatically dims and brightens around that reference that you've just set it at, depending on the outside external lighting. So if you then went back into the cloud again, it would make it dimmer because you don't need it so bright. And then if you were flying towards the sun, it would go full bright.
So is there like a little sensor on it somewhere that's obviously detecting the luminosity of the cockpit?
Exactly that, yeah. And it always catches me by surprise actually, when we've been flying through the night, coming back across the Atlantic, and the sun starts to rise, and we're normally approaching Ireland at this point. The sun comes up, and all of a sudden all of the flight deck instrumentation goes bright from night dim to day bright, and it's like a blink, something like that, and it catches your eye, and it's like, oh, all right, it's daylight then. That's because the aircraft's logic has sensed that there's enough light now that it can reset the lighting to
that's cool.
Daylight.
There we are. So we're now climbing at, it's pitched down at 10,000 feet now to the econ climb speed, which for our cost index is obviously 305 knots a day, and then passing 10,000, lights off, belts off if it's smooth.
Yeah, we put belts to auto.
Perfect. Taxi light can come off, I guess, as well.
Taxi light we actually leave on.
You leave on at your operator.
Yeah, we leave it. Yeah, we leave. It's a standard Boeing procedure to
Okay.
leave on the 787 to leave a taxi light on. The reason why is because there's no point turning it off because it automatically turns off when
So
the
we
nose gear
use
comes in.
that as a takeoff landing clearance memoir, you see. So descending through to 10,000, we'll turn on the fixed landing lights to turn offs, and then when we're cleared to land, we'll put the taxi light on. And then the same for taxiing. We'll have the taxi light on taxiing out, but when we're cleared to line up and wait, we actually turn the taxi light off and wait for our takeoff clearance. That's the modification we've done with the SOPs.
With the 78 in our it knows when you've not done the checklist at the right time. So say for example we carried on through, I don't know, 2,000 feet or something like that, and we're fully configured and we haven't done the landing checks, we'll get a master caution and it will say normal checklist not complete or something like that, and we'll know then what we've done. Happens all the time for the approach checklist because we'll come down to 10,000 feet, through 10,000 feet, we'll set QNH, and then we'll end up asking for a stage of flap, and then it's that action that sets off the checklist, because normally we'll have done the approach checklist before we start selecting flap. So it will say checklist checklist not complete, and we'll go, oh, that'll be the approach checklist then. That's the approach checklist. It just says altimeters, and then that's it.
Wow.
So because of it's good to have things like light switches and stuff. We did it in the 7.3 using lights as memoirs to protect against going off without clearance and stuff like that. But we can use the checklists and stuff like that to help us, because the airplane will tell us when we've forgotten something.
That's really interesting. The amount of what I found, just we've been here for like almost 2 hours, and I've learned so much, Mike, about the 7.8. But it is incredible how much more automation has been built into this compared to their older models. I mean, I only know 7.3. The Max has made a lot of changes to the displays, but in essence, not much has happened on the overhead panel. In fact, there's not enough changes in the Max to allow for any sort of significant procedural changes, where this is a completely different animal, really. It's just shoved the Boeing into the 21st century, and it had, I see there's some commonality, obviously, but also so much has changed, certainly with the systems, which is taking some time for me to get used to anyway. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like I say, I've flown the Embraer 145, then the Boeing 737 NGs. I never actually flew the Max. By the time I came onto the 7.8, the Max was just coming on the line for us in my operator, and then coming on to 7.8. So I've got a bit of experience between different aircraft types and how they all work and operate. And obviously the Boeing philosophy is standard no matter what Boeing you fly. It's evident, and it's there for a reason, and it makes it easier for a 7.3 pilot to transition from something to the 7.8 or from 7.8 back to 7.3. But it's just things like all of the technology and the automation that really helps you out. So you have a lot of spare mental capacity flying the 787 to monitor the systems and monitor everything else. So a lot of pilots are more comfortable flying the 7.8, not just because I can be lazy now because it's going to do it for me and stuff like that, because it's actually because they know that it's going to the airplane helps you a lot in terms of the ICAS, the electronic checklist system, all the automated systems. So it takes a lot of pressure off you to give you the capacity to work hard should something go wrong. And you're not going to be maxed out if any sort of eventuality did happen.
That's awesome. Now I will allow anyone, anyone could at any point now, but now the workload has lowered a little bit. If there's anyone in chat that has any questions for Mike about the 787, now's the time to ask. He's given up the time this afternoon to join me on a stream, which is so great. So if you have any questions about the 787, feel free to ask those in chat, and Mike will pick and choose some of those and help answer any questions. I'm sure as we continue towards Copenhagen, He'll further give you some guidance on how to get the aircraft set up, what it's doing in descent, what VNAV's doing, because there are some differences with VNAV here compared to the NG as well. Looking at the flight plan, going to the progress page here, we're estimated to be in Copenhagen just under an hour, so touching down at 16:57 if we do the routing. Or I don't think we have. Well, we don't have the arrival in, but we'll do that later on.
Yeah. I'll just scroll up the YouTube chat a bit and see if there are any questions there. So, Coyote asks, how do you press toga in the 787-10 again? Well, you worked that one. I answered that one for you earlier, didn't I? So you can answer that one.
So yeah, I'm no 7A guy, but look, they're massive, Mike.
Yeah, you can't miss them.
No, they look like two huge push buttons here, but these are the toga switches, aren't they?
Yep. So they're not difficult to miss. I think because some Boeings, the toga buttons are the buttons on the outside of the thrust levers, but if you press those, all they do is disconnect the auto throttle. But in some Boeings, they actually are the go-around switches on some of those. You know, the little black nipple switches on the outside. So I think having the toga buttons on the front, where you basically have to just roll your wrist forwards to hit them, is better, because it's more comfortable. They're bigger. If you mean to do a go around, you really mean it, and you've got a big button to press it to do it. So yeah, those are the ones there. So you press those to hit toga after you've got to well, because obviously the Asobo 7.8 is based on the Rolls-Royce engines. Once you've got to about 20 TPR stabilised, that's when I'd hit toga. So that's those. Another one about the HUD. Taylor says, do you have to use the HUD? That would give me a headache. I found it doesn't actually give me a headache at all, because the heads-up display is referenced to a point in infinity in space. The perspective of it's not anywhere close to you. It doesn't feel anywhere close to you to the point that you feel like you're trying to focus on, where your eyes are trying to focus in the distance as well at the same time as focus close to you. It's actually fine. It's comfortable to use, but Boeing recommend using it the majority of the time. You don't have to. It's not a no-go item. You know, if you rocked up to a 7.8 and both heads-up displays were in op, you can still go. You just have to, you know, check the MEL and make sure that your weather is fine and your RVRs are okay to still go if there is weather. But a lot of pilots who get used to flying with the HUD, when it is in op, they have a bit of a it's like for Airbus pilots if the table's in op. You know, that's our version of it.
I'd have that reaction.
Exactly. Anything else here? What does the auto mode for the seatbelt lights do? I never understood that. So Lennart's question there. So on the seatbelt sign button, you've got off, auto, on. Off is just fully off. The seatbelt signs going to be on. On is they're fully on, but auto is a bit of a hybrid of the two, where at the moment they're off. If you're in the cabin, you wouldn't see them on. But if the oxygen masks were to drop, the seatbelt signs would come on. If we forgot to put the seatbelt signs on in the approach, as soon as the gear comes down, then the seatbelt signs would come on. So there's various sort of variables where the seatbelt signs would come on automatically if the crew forgot, as well as emergency situations where the seatbelt signs would come on. So that's basically the difference between auto, on, and off there.
I think for the 7.3 in auto, we use the auto in the cruise, but again, I think it's gear and flap configuration. It's not linked to the masts, I don't think, in any way. But for the 7.8, I think there's some additional features, you said.
I've got my OMB Vol 2 here, so I'll just bring up the actual.
Perfect. Oh, what was that? I can hear a lot of it's sort of clicking sounds here, and I don't know if that was me or you.
Oh.
It's got a lot of performance here. Black Rider, I've just seen your donation. Thank you. Not related to the 7.8, but curious if you've seen the announcement of Microsoft Flight Sim 2024, and if you have, what's your opinion on it? I have seen that, Black Rider UK. It's very exciting. I think a lot of people are taken by shock, but it looks like a lot of aircraft are compatible in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and will be compatible in 2024. We'll have to see, won't we, when it comes out? What's probably even be a better 787 by then.
Hopefully they've got EFD the right way around that.
Hopefully.
So yeah, going back to the seatbelts quickly. So it says here, so the OMB Vol 2 for the 787 says passenger cabin signs. The fastened seatbelt signs are controlled by an overhead panel selector. The signs automatically illuminate when the seatbelt switches in the auto position, and landing gear not up and locked, or flap lever at 5 or greater, or airplane altitude below 10,000 feet, or cabin altitude above 10,000 feet, or passenger oxygen is on. So those are the conditions for the seatbelt signs there.
So a few additional reasons for it to be turned on automatically.
Yeah. Eclipso says, can Mike explain to us the TPR, please? I can only say what it stands for, which is thrust pressure ratio. I can't really, because I'm a General Electric engine guy, I can't really sort of explain it, but I do know that General Electric, on their website, if you Google or YouTube General Electric GENX and the Trent 1000, because they're obviously competing engines, they've got very good informative videos about how those engines work, and you'll find a more in-depth explanation as to what exactly TPR is. So, like I say, I can't answer that one exactly, but only say that it's thrust pressure ratio.
Perfect.
Food test says, was approaching as a passenger into Madrid with Air Europa 789. During the approach, saw that flaps are shaking a lot during the process. Yeah, you will get a lot of wing flex, and on the wings you'll also have flaperons, spoilers, and the ailerons. So there's a lot of moving panels on there. So if you wanted to go to external view, maybe, and just have a look at the wing for a second, we can just have a look at the.
I'll turn the sim down slightly.
So if we had a look at the top of the
Actually,
wing.
hold on, I can do it a little bit better. I'll get in the drone cam.
Oh yes, there we go. Look at that. So right at the tip of the wing is where the ailerons are. They're only very small on the 787, the actual ailerons themselves, because they don't need to be that big. In flight, in the cruise, the ailerons actually get locked out, so you'll only get the flaperons. So the flaps actually turn into ailerons as well. So might be able to see on a replay, I'm not sure. It's hard to sort of tell. But what you'll have been seeing is a whole combination of the flaps, the ailerons, and the inboard spoilers all working together to increase manoeuvrability.
Is this
Like
flex?
say,
Is this flex exaggerated, Mike, or does it actually go up as much as this?
I do think it does go up that much. We can't actually see the wing flex from the flight deck. We can only ever see the very, very tip where the strobes are from the flight deck. Even then, I'd have to really crane myself around to see that far back. But apparently, it is. It is that big.
That's insane.
That wing flex. But to anyone who's flown recently as a passenger on the 78, sort of sat in the center cabin area, will be able to see for sure.
Awesome.
Let's see if there's any more questions here. Can you feel the... Paul Chris Ali says, can you feel the added wing flex from the carbon fibre compared to the NG while in the air? No, it's not something that we can feel really. The wing flex, we can't feel that or tell that it's happening, to be honest. Let's have a look.
There's loads of good questions coming here. What about fuel
That's very good.
jettison? Ooh, I'm not. Someone said to me, "Can you do fuel jettison today?" I'm not risking it because we'll end up losing all our fuel.
Yeah, I've actually jettisoned fuel in real life.
I have you?
Because it would come up on departure out of Manchester for a flight to Mexico. So ECL basically said gear disagree and nose gear door. Basically, what had happened is that the logic system that basically controls when the nose gear door opens, when the gear comes up, and when it closes again, got itself all totally mixed up. There was nothing actually wrong. It was just a computer glitch, basically. And the nose gear door wasn't commanded to open when the nose gear itself wanted to come up, and it just froze itself and then just said error, don't know what to do, help. And so we basically just ran the electronic checklist for it, and it didn't say much other than, you know, what the condition is, and so it was down to captain's and crew's discretion. Then there was 3 of us on the flight at the time because the flight was a longer one. We basically said, well, we can't continue all the way to Mexico with the nose gear down. All agreed? We all agreed. Right, we'll have to go home then. So we basically liaised with ATC, picked a place to dump some fuel, and then brought it back for a totally normal landing. We didn't. Boeing don't like, especially on the 787. Boeing don't want you to start going into deep troubleshooting and stuff like that, because it's a computer. If you start trying to troubleshoot, you'll make things worse. So we didn't cycle the gear. We didn't do anything. We just literally followed the ECL. ECL didn't say anything, but we obviously knew you can't fly a whole long haul flight with the nose gear down. So the only option was to come back. So in order to come back, we had to dump fuel. So
Wow.
but it's a very clever system. So you basically tell the system, you arm the system first. You tell it how much you want to weigh for landing, and obviously to save time, you just do max landing weight. So we dumped fuel for about half an hour.
And how much fuel can you dump a minute? What's the capability? Is it a significant amount, or how long are you dumping it for?
I'm not actually sure. I'm not actually sure what the flow rate is, but I think we went from we must have dumped about 20 tons in half an hour. So
Wow.
working out the maths there, it is quite a high rate, because obviously time is of the essence in certain scenarios. Obviously,
Yeah.
nothing was wrong with the plane that we were worried about. We could have, but the reason why large airliners have fuel dumping is because it would take so long to burn off the fuel to max landing weight. In the terms of the 737 or something, you just do a few orbits in a hold. It might take a little bit longer.
In serious issues, you can land with no issues above max landing weight, even with medical emergencies.
Well, exactly that.
Problem.
Yeah, it's just if you were to land over max landing weight in the 787, it would just be a case of having an inspection, because the main worry is that your brakes might fuse if the brakes get that hot, and you might not taxi off, but you will have still landed safely.
Excellent. Other questions we got coming in here. People talking about the declutter mode on the heads-up display. Is that a feature?
Oh yes. I think somebody had mentioned it was simulated. So the way we get to that is on the control column in real life. This is where, again, new guys to type, or new guys and gals to type, make their first mistake when they want to try and get into declutter mode. They've seen it in the training, in the type rating, and it's the first time they want to go back to it in the line, and they look at the two buttons on the control column there, either side of the trim switches, and they're like, which one was it? And one of those is the autopilot disconnect. And
Can I guess? I don't know.
Mode. Which one would you guess?
I'm thinking this is autopilot disconnect. I'm going to push it. Yeah.
yeah. So obviously that's the one we don't want to press, because if you press that in the cruise, you get the master warning for autopilot, and because you're not expecting it, it's very, very scary, and it wakes you up. So it's the one that they are very slightly different in tactile. So the autopilot disconnect switch is more of a nipple, and the declutter switch is
that the
plug.
official terminology, is it?
I don't know. What do you call those switches that stick out? It's like a nipple switch.
We'll call it nipple switch, Mike.
Yeah, we'll call it a nipple switch. Yeah.
I found the
I can't even
declutter
remember.
button.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, let's have a look at that. So that.
I think that's it, declutter.
Yeah. That's perfect. So in declutter, obviously you lose your tapes, your speed tape and your altitude tape, but what you get instead is just to the bottom left and the bottom right of the flight path vector, is your speed and your altitude, and that just tells you your actual. So you're doing 250 knots indicated and 39,000, and the B is for Barrow.
So I got you there.
So if it was radio, it'd be 39,000 R, but obviously radio altimeters don't measure 39,000 feet, but it would be R in that case. Then obviously you've still got your Mach number in the very bottom left. You've still got your selected heading. You've still got your attitude reference lines. You've got the horizon line, which now goes the entire way across the heads-up display. You've got your selected airspeed at the top left. So you've got decimal. So the aircraft's commanding decimal 822.
Yeah.
And then your selected altitude, which is the top right, which is 39,000 feet. And then we can have a look at it in the descent. Or actually, could you just go to flight level 410? We'll just climb to
sure.
flight level 410.
So
We'll
if
do
I
a
set it here and then
cruise
push it, it'll update the cruise as well in the FMC.
Yeah, so you go 410, alt intervene, it should update it in the FMC. And we haven't done the after takeoff check either.
No. Oops.
We get thruster FVNAV speed. Now, if you have a look on there now, your decluttered altitude is now climbing in live time, and you've got your vertical speed there, so you're doing 1,400 feet per minute up. Now you can see that the selected altitude is now 410, and the actual selected airspeed as per like the FMC for that level was now decimal 819.
It's pretty good that they've got this level of detail in a default aircraft, isn't it? I mean, I think it's... I don't know if it had it before this update on the HUD.
It's I don't think the HUD... I don't think we even bothered looking at the HUD before the update. There was barely anything on it. I think, if I recall, I think it was like a generic fighter HUD that they got from some other thing that they just whacked on there. But since then, they've obviously made it look real.
Yeah.
So that's 1,000 to go. Now, if we go back to declutter, I think somebody's who's that? Is that Vanguard? Shouldn't there be course track arrow pointing up underneath the compass rose on the heads-up display? So if we go back to
the full mode.
Full mode, so the track is there on the compass rose. That line.
There's hardly any wind, is there? Well,
If
crosswind.
there's no wind, you can't. Yeah, we've got full tailwind, so it is there. But if we had like a big crosswind, the track would be there, and it's on the compass rose on the heads-up display, it's heading up, but on the ND, obviously, it's as per the customer, it's track up.
Yeah, we actually have track up. I think most Boeing operators have track up on the ND, but I think our compass rose is heading up, but we never. I don't use it on the PFD at all.
Yeah.
There we are, 41,000 feet.
Yep.
Perfect. Almost halfway there to Copenhagen. Which is doing pretty well over the
what
North
would be
Sea.
a good point then, before we forget to, is we would now normally put in the arrival. We'd select the star and set the route and start chatting about how we would get in. So normally after a long haul sector, we don't need to do any of this for hours and hours. Sometimes we get it done and early so that we've got an accurate arrival time on the progress page. Because obviously the progress page without a star is just showing, straight to the point. Time. So if you wanted to factor in and give an accurate arrival time to the passengers for an informative PA, you'd put the star in and you say, okay, we're going to get there at 1700 plus, I guess.
For the sake of realism, we'll have a look at the METAR at Copenhagen. Surface wind 0804. I'll see what they're landing on. I was expecting 22, but it could be a straight in now on 04. For the sake of realism, I'll have a little look on flight radar and see how they're landing there. I think someone mentioned they were on the shorter runway at Copenhagen as well at one point. Looks like they are operating off 22 still, which I don't know if that's the preferred. They also had
I can't remember.
They also had someone recently land on the shorter one as well. Whatever the shorter runway is in Copenhagen. I'll have to have a look.
I've got my charts here. Somebody is asking away about service ceiling. What do we got there? Martin, what's the 787 ceilings? 43,000 is our ceiling. And then I'll ask it another way. If we could go above flight level 410, would flight deck sim enjoy it more than usual? Would you like to see 430?
Is that some sort of dig? I tell you what, just because
I could go higher than you.
just because we can, I will. There we are, 43,000. Actually, I hope it's not above max. I should think it will be okay. That'll be on the cruise page.
No, we'd be fine. Yeah.
Oh, it does say max is 4.1.
Max 4.1.
Well,
I at 175.
I don't know.
-10. Okay, maybe. Yeah, I'd say okay, maybe.
Oh, okay.
But we'll be able to tell when the bars start meeting on the.
Well, there is. There we are. We've got. I should. Well, in reality, if we were above the max, the amber manoeuvre margin should be touching the clacker up here. It's a 7.3. There seems to be quite a significant amount of margin here, so that's not quite right, probably.
But normally on a short haul flight sector, even with a lot of passengers on. We did this recently, actually, going to Cape Verde and back, then and even Tenerife, The advantage the 78 has doing these short haul sectors is that we can literally climb over all the traffic, and if we file flight plan at 4.3, we tend to miss out a lot of the slot problems because we're
You get
above everyone,
directs as well.
and we're that much faster. We're overtaking everyone anyway.
Yeah.
So. Simly Bob says, wouldn't you stow the HUD now? No, it's giving us good information. I fly with the HUD in the cruise all the time. It's always. I'm used to flying with it now, and Boeing do encourage using it. So, but if you wanted to have a look out, there's no, by all means, you can stow it, have a look out the window, and then put it back in again. That's what I would do.
Cool. We'll leave it out. I think we're getting consensus that I'm sort of looking on Copenhagen. Some people saying we don't land on 1230, only in heavy winds. I'm looking at departures here. I think I'll stick with what I did in the test sector. We'll go with 22 left. There's an aircraft that's just taking off, and I think coming on an approach on 22 left, and that's the preferred landing runway, I think, in Copenhagen. And 22 right for departures.
Yeah, that is. That's what I've. That's how I remember Copenhagen. Yeah, that's how I remember Copenhagen. Landing on the left,
Perfect.
departures on the right, because it's easier to sort out.
So I'll get that all in here. So index arrivals, 22 left, and the Tudlow arrival for 22 left is a Tudlow 3 Charlie, and it's not the transition, that's via the beacon. So I guess we'll execute that, and it's an RNAV SID, so we could be able to just let it do its thing. I think there's restrictions to comply with, and go from there really. But now I've selected the ILS and the star. I'm right in thinking the only thing we need to set now is minimums. Courses, frequencies, all done automatically.
That's right. Yeah. So you would you'd also have to set your as part of the minimums. You just have to set your approach speeds. So we do take a landing performance, get a VREF and bug for flaps 20 or flaps 25 or flaps 30 landing, depending on what we wanted to do, depending on performance. And we would go in the approach page, the perf. Let's go down to init ref. Approach ref. We would type in the weight for landing. So we'd work out the landing weight. So on the FMC, we've got 8 tons of fuel at the moment. If we went to the progress page,
just like we do this then.
So call it 6 tons. So we knock off 2 tons off the gross weight there. So 172.7, up in 172.7 on the gross weight. And then we'd select normal landings are done at flap 25 in the 7/8.
Okay.
And then you just pop that in the flap speed box, and that's it. So that should then show up on the PFD. There you go. Yep. F25 147. Yep, that's it.
Perfect.
Then you just set the runway minimum. The approach.
So I'll get the charts out for the benefit of the guys watching the stream. And I guess when you're briefing it, you're stepping through here the legs, making sure the routing's all correct, the restrictions are in.
That's it. Yeah. We do a what we call like a track and distance check. So we're checking. So the pilot monitoring is reading off the CDU. Pilot flying is checking off the chart, and as PM is reading through the legs, the PF is just checking that what the PM is reading is the same as what's on the chart.
Perfect. So this arrival is the Tudlow, starting at Tudlow on the chart, Lugas straight line to the course of VOR. Here's a speed restriction of 250. It's all being coded in correctly, so we've got the max 250 in bold in the FMC as per the chart. And then next page, it's all RNAV points. Charlie Hotel 654 at or below 120. So that would be where VNAV's going to target first, is to create that meet that restriction, I think. And I think that's pretty much a straight in, because earlier on the test sector, as soon as I passed this point, the VNAV wanted to carry on descending straight away.
This was the other little disappointing thing that we'll see again today, is that in real life we could literally, with the 787, because the VNAV is that good, just set the minima, and if air traffic control didn't exist, we could just set the minima on the altitude select the bug, and the airplane will just take us down. And the only thing we'd have to do is just move the flap lever, and the airplane would just configure itself automatically for an automatic landing. Such is the beauty of the automation of this thing. But obviously that's not what is normal to be done, but that's just the capability of the airplane.
That's great. So all the on-off points look good, track and distances, and then this shoots us out off at a beggy and then vectors. Now, I know some airlines vary with this rule. If you have a vector point in here, Mike, do you delete that and just go direct to the centre fix, or do you leave it in?
Yeah, we just tend to delete it and make it.
We do the same.
Because otherwise you don't have a valid VNAV path really, and it helps you with your planning. So you basically what you put in the box is what you expect, and if you think that if we don't get vectored by then, we might in the fixed page put that a beggy point, and then we'll heading select to that.
Exactly what we do. It's exactly what we do. Now we do have the beauty of no ATC, so we can sort of leave that in. So after a beggy, we could just route direct to the centre fix and leave it in there. And then you said just on the ILS, it's literally just the minimums is all we need to set.
That's right, yeah. And then what we would do is just to check, again, because obviously it's worth checking, we check on the NavRad page, you should be able to see all of the ident and used frequencies there. So, there you go. So you've got so you just check that the frequency is correct, and the course is correct. And it looks like it is.
Again, just Airbus. More Airbus.
Yeah, more Airbus.
So you only need to tune things if you want to do it. I mean, en route automatic tuning as well, isn't it? So
it's automatic en route tuning. You can hard tune things in if you want to, but it's just a case of then remembering. Yeah, just remembering to detune it afterwards.
Amazing. Right, we'll set the minimums then. 208, which is 200 feet. AGL on the RVR needed is 550 meters. So 208 Barrow. This is a bit fiddly here, I think, in the default 7.8. You can't, if you hold down the mouse too much, it increases very quickly. There we are, 208. Oh my days. Almost there. There we are. So I've set the minimums. So frequencies, courses, minimums, of which the frequencies, the courses you don't need to set, and that's it. You'd obviously check the performance, choose your flap and reverse thrust configuration, and that's essentially it, I guess, for an ILS.
Yep. For as much as the sim needs, that's all we need to do.
Amazing.
That's all the 787 needs. So that leaves us more time to chat, have a coffee, stretch our legs, and the other good thing about these sort of short haul sectors on the 7.8 is, like I say, we do them so fast. There's not much else out there crossing Europe other than other long haul operators doing Mach 8.1 or even more. This is quite what I would say is quite a reserved sort of speed to go across Europe in. Even though with that low cost index, flying at lower altitudes perhaps, again it would command a lower Mach number, but we'd still override it and say, we don't want to be bimbling about decimal 8.1, let's do decimal 8.5. But obviously doing decimal 8.1 helps us out today because it gives us more time to answer some questions, go through and take our time with it and have a bit of fun.
That's cool. So I've done a little operator thing here for my own benefits. I'm right, I did try earlier, we put the runway point in and then we put fixed rings based off the runway point for situation awareness, but I couldn't do that here. Am I right in thinking the real 7.8 doesn't do it either?
We've never done that. We don't really select the runway points. We'll select maybe the what we can do on the 787 is an off-path descent display, and I don't know if that's simulated here. Where on the, I'm just trying to remember the page that it's on. Basically, we can select a waypoint and a level, and displaying on the ND, it will give us two circles. One circle will the dash line circles. One will be like, if you haven't started your descent by this point, you in a clean configuration, you won't make it clean. You won't make that point and the altitude and restriction clean. And then there's another one where if you haven't dirtied up by that point, you're going to definitely need some flap or
Need some more
drag
yeah.
to help you. Yeah, exactly. So there is that. I think it's in the VNAV page of the CDU. No, not there. Where would it
There's
be?
a lot of it
This is
blanked out.
there's a lot of it blanked out. And the other thing as well is that I tend to sort of go through the FMC pages. If I can't remember where something was on, I go through them all until I like, oh yeah, that was it. Because there's so many pages of stuff compared to the 7.3. So if we go legged, let's see what's on that page. So init ref, index, approach. That was what we were just on. Index. Yeah, it might not be there, to be honest, because it would have already popped. If it was there, I would have seen it already.
Okay. I think these are more... Oh, look, you can actually change a few things here. IRS, alignment, ND mode. That's quite cool.
I can actually change the cell call, I suppose. That might be alright for that thing.
Yeah, cool. Let's have a look here in chat if there's any questions. Pedro said, how fast can it go? What's your maximum speed?
Ooh. I've not done anything higher than decimal... Yeah, we don't normally go any higher than decimal 8.6. I'm sure the airplane is capable of doing like Mach decimal 8.8, but that's the sort of speed we wouldn't really be going anywhere near.
Yeah, I'll just wait back at decimal 8.2. Adrian said, is this the default 7.8? It is. This is the new updated default 787 for Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is a significant improvement on the one before.
So I am very impressed. For a default aircraft, this is very good. It's almost like, we were saying a few years back, weren't we, when MSFS first came out and everybody was asking, oh, what are the airliners like? And we were basically saying, just if you like GA, just the GA planes are good, stick with those for now, until they started to come out with, a bit of time had passed, they started to come out with some decent airliners.
Yeah.
But now this is the sort of, I'd say, this is the sort of level at which the GA planes are when MSFS first came out. That they were really good, really fun. It's really good. And for a complex aircraft like a 787, you probably got 85% of everything modelled. If they didn't want to bother putting anything else in to make it a full study level sim, they wouldn't need to be honest, because they'll, for just sim entertainment purposes, this is plenty to be getting on with.
If you just do a flight from A to B on VATSIM, you can do everything you want to do in this aircraft. It looks like a 7.8. It sort of roughly flies like a 7.8, I think, as well. The pitch and power setting seemed right on final. I mean, it's just those really deep level simulation things which are going to take a lot of time and effort to get modelled, I think.
Yeah. It's I think I would like to see a few more updates to it, especially with all the other airliners. In the meantime, between now and obviously when 2024 comes out, and hopefully they will be able to just carry it forward, so they've got less work for themselves to do for 2024. That would be my wish to see, because I think from what I understood of 24, if they're going to go down the route of a lot of scenario, it looks like they're going to do a lot of scenario type things,
like missions and stuff.
Yeah, they're going to be doing a lot of work developing missions and scenarios, so I think they'll have to make it easy on themselves if they get the aircraft right in 2020, they can just carry it all forward, because they did say that they were going to honour everyone's purchases. So if they hold their word to that, then who's to say why they can't just drag and drop everything file wise and coding wise of all the airplanes that are there already, and just concentrate on the scenario.
I think it was a bit of a bombshell when they announced it, because no one saw it coming. I think
I was surprised as well.
Yeah, I think everyone was, and I think a lot of people initially thought it was DLC, but no, it is going to be a brand new simulator.
Very exciting.
Crazy. Someone asked, can you do Cat 3 landing without autopilot? I guess that's referencing the heads-up display.
So a Cat 3 landing, I think the autopilot is required. I've got the KRH here from my company that will tell me the requirement for.
Because I think for us, we have to do Cat 2, Cat 3 with an autopilot, but I think some airlines can do Cat 2 manually, but you need HUD.
Yeah. Interestingly, the Embraer, this is going back a bit, was a Cat 2 capable airplane, but the autopilot isn't capable of doing an auto land. So what we would do is go autopilot to Cat 2 minima, and as long as we had the visual references for the Cat 2 minima, we would disconnect the autopilot and then land manually. That's what the Embraer would do.
That's actually quite. So I suppose. I mean, obviously it doesn't have any auto land, but it still makes it quite versatile in low visibility conditions.
For what it was, for a regional jet, it was great for what it could do, cheaply and efficiently. But yeah, let me have a look here at what our requirements are for. So what have we got here?
Lawrence says Cat 3 manual landing. I've only ever heard of it Southwest and Alaska doing it in the NG or Max. Interesting.
Yeah, I think there are requirements. So there's that gate, isn't there, the 1,000-foot gate on the approach. If there were certain systems that aren't working before that point, you can't commit to do the approach in the first place. But if you're already on it and you're short final, you had the autopilot, then at short final the autopilot failed. I think it's for both cases, before and after that gate, you do have to do a go around if you lose the autopilot, and you might have to go somewhere with it. But I'm just trying to find my hit list to find that for sure.
There's also very specific airline procedures and rules as well. For example, if we're doing an auto land and we have an autopilot failure below 1,000 feet, it's a mandatory go around as well, and any time up to and including minimums and after in the judgment of the captain if they think it's unsafe. Also, engine failures below 1,000 feet. Now, that brings me to another point, Mike. Engine failures in this. Can you do auto land still?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Wow.
It does it. The engine failure situation and capabilities of this aircraft are incredible. Very minimal rudder input is required. On the takeoff roll, if you have an engine failure on takeoff, yes, you will need a lot of rudder input still. But once you rotate and come off the ground, the autopilot takes care of it, and you need no rudder input whatsoever.
So you just gently release it.
Yep, you just release the rudder input that you put in, and the autopilot holds it in for you. The reason why Boeing have designed it so that you need to put in rudder input on the IFARTO is because they still want you to recognise and be confident of which engine is out.
Yeah.
So, the dead leg is the dead engine kind of thing. So, as long as you've put in, it just goes back to what we were doing, how we were taught at Oxford, wasn't it? Left leg dead, left engine dead, and so on. If it was the instructors would say, right, which one aren't you using? Your left leg, right? Now you know which engine's dead. So, the airplane is similar in that sense, in that logic, that it wants you to put in enough rudder input. Now this is from the manual. They want you to put in just enough rudder input to recognise the failed engine, but the manual says you don't need to actually put that much input in, but the sim and the aircraft in real life tells you otherwise. You still have to put in a lot of rudder input. And then again, because it's fly-by-wire, if you do a single engine go around, and you'd have to be doing so much on the rudder trim change and everything because of the thrust compensation and stuff like that on the 7.3, very minimal required. There is no pitch power couple or thrust power couple on the 787. The fly-by-wire eliminates that, trims automatically for your thrust changes.
There's me, on my 6 monthly sim check, my leg shaking for 4 minutes in the climb out, praying for the MSA to come up here, and you're just sat there, ordering another coffee from the cabin.
Yeah, you guys get a full leg workout, and we're just still able to walk to the cafe afterwards.
That's incredible. Once the 7.3 is in trim, it is a reasonably low workload, but that first initial climb out, you will remember, and final, and if you have to go around, there's a significant amount of coordination required with your feet and hands when you're changing thrust. So that's amazing that the 7.8 just eliminates all that by doing it all automatically. That's superb.
Yeah. So going back to the answer about the Cat 3 without the autopilot, yep. Above 200 feet AGL, you have to go around, and below 200 feet AGL, it's a go around, or if you are in visual conditions, you can land or go around. So as long as you can see the runway, if you've lost the autopilot, as long as you can see the runway, you can land, but if not, you've got to go.
Amazing. Right, I've just received an FMC message. Now, is this message correct in display?
It is correct. It is correct, and it's also correct to about the same rough distance and time as well to where we would get it. So it gives you enough notice so that if you weren't paying attention and it pops up with that message, it gives you enough time to actually get into ATC and request it, because obviously air traffic can be busy sometimes. It gives you some time, so you know, if you can't get in to speak to ATC right away because they're busy, or something else is going on, or you're just doing some last minute bits and pieces, you've got a little bit of time before you start to get above the VNAV path.
Perfect. Now, shall we do as you was talking about? Well, do as you were explaining earlier about how if you set your minimums, it should theoretically get you all the way down, at least onto the ILS. I guess the only restriction we've got to comply with is 250 at Kilo Oscar Romeo, and to be at or below flight level 120 at Charlie Hotel 654. Is there anything else you wanted to see it do, or?
No, we can do that. It's just, yeah, that's the way it was. It's supposed to work. Obviously, like I say, in real life, we wouldn't. We would set like we would set the next restriction. But for the purposes of demonstration, yeah, just set what's that?
208. So if you set 300.
Yeah. If you click auto and set it all the way down. Now I wonder if this is similar. If you click to auto and set it all the way down, it should set the actual minima itself.
No, it went all the way to 0.
Ah, right. So that's.
So it would actually set 203.
Yeah, it would actually set the minimum.
208, sorry. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Well,
Yeah.
I'll round it up to the nearest 100 feet. We'll set it to 300. And I think... Oh, no, is it descending now?
No, it's just turning the corner
okay.
now. The FMAs would tell you if it was descending.
I think we've just lost the... I think it's just doing something a little bit funky here.
Just check the FMAs.
I think we've just passed the top of descent point, but it's not started descending. Shall I give it a push?
Yeah, if we just give it a push,
Yeah,
because I think we saw that last time, didn't we?
Yeah.
That it doesn't actually model it accurately. Where by staying in VNAV mode, so in VNAV path, if you move the A cell, yeah, exactly. Like some of the people in chat are recognising it's bugged as well. If you move the A cell, the real airplane will take you down in VNAV path, but it won't descend for some reason. They've modelled it incorrectly, where you have to actually alt intervene to come down.
Okay. Now it's in VNAV speed. The 737 logic was updated to sort of match VNAV in all their aircraft now. So we do have we refer to it as common VNAV. So if you're high on path like this, we get VNAV speed as well, and then you either accelerate the aircraft by opening the window, get back onto your profile, or you speed brake at your present speed. So I could open the speed window, we get back onto the path that way.
There's several ways to skin a cat, as you know, but the way I would do it personally, I'd just use the speed brake. It's more effective.
We'll extend that to the up position. Lauren was asking about Copenhagen arrival. Vector arrivals won't do it any good putting minimums in the MCP. Well, remember, we've deleted the vector. We've just routed direct to the centre fix after the last waypoint. Now, this seems quite effective.
It's overly effective. Yeah.
Same with the Zebo mod in X-planes like this at the moment. But that's seems a lot.
So what I found in the real aircraft, obviously having flown the 7.3 and the 7.8, the 7.3 spoilers aren't very effective, but the 7.8 spoilers are very effective, but not that effective. So, like I say before in the previous stream, when trying to maintain speed in the descent, because the Boeing 787's wing design is so good, it is a bit of a slippery airplane, and in VNAV path in the descent, it prioritizes the path over the speed. So you will find yourself, if you don't do anything about it, your speed will be above the bugged speed in the descent. And so I'll more often than not, I'll have the speed brake out for a considerable part of the descent, just to maintain the speed. And it's more to do with air traffic control more than anything, because I could be happy. I'll happily accept 10 knots over what the FMC speed wants to do, because it's maintaining the path, and I know it's going to slow it down eventually. But it's not accurate for flow control into the airports. So you need to maintain, especially going to some of the Balearic Islands and places that are very busy. They really get on at you for speed control. So the speed brake is out often in the 787.
That's cool. Now we've recaptured the path, and just like with the 7.3, we've got VNAV path now. Instead of idle and arm, we now have this hold FMA.
Yeah.
So the speed, will the autothrottle always maintain this target speed, or at what point will it add thrust?
So it'll maintain that until you start to sort of get too low on speed. Then it'll bring it. It'll wake up in inverted commas, and it'll bring the thrust back up. So you can actually control the descent with the rate of descent with the thrust levers when it's in hold. Because when it says hold, it's basically saying it's up to you, Gov, what you want to do. If you want to put thrust on, descend at 1,000 feet. But then you can't really, you start to affect the path then if you do that. But what I tend to do is, because it's slippy, if it's in hold, I'll just close the thrust levers.
Okay.
If it gives me the option, if it's in hold, I'll close the thrust levers, because like I say, you can see it already, it's starting to increase speed. So you've got 290 knots and the FMC wants to descend at 283 at this part. So that's accurate to how the airplane will fly. The airplane will always be a little bit faster in VNAV path, because it's prioritizing the path.
Yeah, so very similar to the 7.3 in that respect. So it'll only prioritise the path. The difference being, though, that the speed, you just simply get a drag required message in the 7.3, and if you get low on speed, more than 15 knots, it'll revert from arm to FMC speed and add thrust. And
we get the same.
And remind me, Mike, this magenta target here, this magenta line box, what's this about?
So I was just looking up the definition of that, but I would call it as, basically it's like a target box of speed. So I think if the speed, if your actual current speed is anywhere within that magenta margin, it can maintain the path. If it starts to go outside, if it's either too slow or too fast, it might not be able to maintain the path. So if it's if it's outside of the margin and it's too fast, then it'll start to get too steep, and if it's too slow, it'll start to get too shallow to maintain the path, and you'll either go above or below accordingly. But I'm just currently looking up the actual definition of that in the Vol 2 to try and find it to get an actual. And I might embarrass myself because I might have been wrong, I might be right, but
hey, I've always got mine
see what
nearby.
it said. Yeah, but yeah, leave it with me. I'll keep looking at that, and I will get an actual answer.
Anthony Teal's heading off. Thanks a lot for popping in. Look after yourself, and thanks for your donation as well earlier, Anthony. I did see that. I'll read it off there. Just to remind everyone, I have got alerts muted for this stream, so any subscriber pings, membership pings won't come up here, just to give Mike the full attention he deserves for all this information he's giving. It's been absolutely fantastic, invaluable in fact for me, but also I think for many of you viewing as well.
Thank you, appreciate it.
No, we appreciate it. So it seems to be doing a reasonable job here. It's just about 20 knots fast on the speed, but it's within range. It's holding the path very nicely. Seems to be doing a reasonably good job here for again a default aircraft. It's pretty decent.
Yeah.
Now
it's not done too bad at all.
I'll just set. I haven't set any order brake settings. I'll go with order brake 2, and we have the flap setting already. I think that should be long enough for Copenhagen's 2 left.
As a general guide, we tend to prefer order brake 3 in most cases, and backing it off either with manual braking or you know, or a lot of captains might say to me, they'll make call out. So might touch down at brakes 3, roll a little bit, and they'll call to me brakes 2, and I'll carefully select brakes 2 because it's very easy with the auto brake switch to knock it off completely, or knock it down a step further. So yeah, you very carefully just select the appropriate brake, auto brake level, because obviously it's a level, it's not a actual setting, auto brake level that's requested by the commander, because they, you know, we do try and make it comfortable. There's no point having a nice touchdown and then just putting the anchors out and throwing everyone forwards in their seats.
See, it's forbidden for us to use the auto brake during deceleration. The only way you can disconnect the auto brake is by braking manually. We're not allowed to add thrust. You're not allowed to retract speed brake. You just have to use your feet manually.
Oh, right.
That's our SOP. So again, we're descending now, about 23, flight level 232 for 300 feet. Remember, we've set 300 feet as a sort of an experiment to see how the aircraft behaves. It's doing, I'd say, a pretty decent job so far.
I think it's great. I think, you know, VNAV, a lot of people, there's a lot of debate that some people think it's good, some people think it's bad. It depends. There's a lot of pilots that sometimes don't even fully understand VNAV because it's like a, you know, there's a lot of wordage about it in the manuals, and depending on who you are, your interpretation of it is either, well, that makes no bloody sense, or it's like, oh, that makes really good sense. But it's there to be used. And I came from an airplane. My first airline is the Embraer didn't have VNAV, so it was totally mental maths all the way down. And then when I came to the 7.3, I thought, crikey, this is you know, it's really, really good. It's telling me when I should descend and everything. I don't need to work that out anymore. But you start to lose your ability to calculate constantly your path. So yeah, it's VNAV is once you get to grips with it and you can understand, and this is why it's a shame that the VSD isn't simulated at the moment in the in this default model, is because we use the VSD a lot to help us as well. As long as we're in LNAV, the VSD will give us a good path. As soon as you come into heading, it doesn't tell you anything useful. So.
Now, see, Paul, you've asked a question: will the auto throttle? Will you be using the auto throttle landing, or do you still manually adjust the throttle? I can answer this because Mike answered it for me. You leave the auto throttle engaged, don't you? And I did test it earlier.
You do.
Was it 20 feet goes to retard?
Yes, yeah. 20 feet RA, it retards to idle. Yeah.
There you go. So I will do that today, and it is modelled as well.
There was another question for me there. Who was that from? Lawrence Draper. Mike, what's the longest flight you've done in this beast, or do you do in this beast? The longest flight I've done, probably 14, coming up to 14, almost 14 hours. That's with a very long headwind and taking into account not being able to fly over Russia anymore. Coming back from Thailand, so we had a very long, convoluted route that took us from Thailand across the Indian Ocean towards all the way across India, across the Arabian Sea to Muscat, Oman, all the way up Iraq, then crossing into Turkey, then along Turkey, then back home from there. So then it then turns into a regular sort of Dalaman or Antalya flight from that point. But yeah, it's a long old flight.
That's a serious amount of time.
But yeah, it's a shame that, you know, global geopolitics and everything does tend to get in the way a little bit and ruin things. There have been times where I have flown in and over and around Ukraine. I've flown over Russia, all beautiful, beautiful countries with very, very interesting scenery. That there are a lot of videos actually on my Instagram of some of the scenery that I've flown over, mountains in Tajikistan, things like that. Yeah, it's some of these areas I do miss flying over because of, you know, geopolitics and whatnot going on in the world, that the airspace is closed off to us these days.
There you go. Now, we've just approached Kilo Oscar Romeo, which is a speed restriction point of 250. It seems to have commanded that speed. I wonder if it'll pitch up to reduce the speed to that point, or will will I have to add drag? We'll see. For those watching,
a little bit of both, I think. So I think it will pitch up. It will reduce the rate. It'll probably go about 1,000 foot per minute or less to get to 250 per 10.
It's good.
And then in order to sort of help it along as well in real life, because it tends to take a while to reduce its speed, because like I say, that wing is quite slippery. A little bit of speed brake just to help it, but it's not that far off. You're pretty much already at 10 knots, so
it's done a really good job.
Yeah.
Look at that. With just less than a mile, 250. It reduced the rate of descent to around 500 feet per minute or so, and now it's at 250. It's going to continue at the best clean idle descent speed. Stay on path here. It's good. Next is the 120 at 654, which I think VNAV's going to put us slightly below that anyway for the profile we're on. That's awesome. Adam, what's Mike's Instagram? Would love to give you a follow. It is at Mike Sierra Charlie, isn't it, Mike?
It is, yeah.
If you look at the pinned comment, it has the tag names there as well. And be sure to subscribe to Pilot Mike's YouTube channel as well. In time, I should think he's going to put some videos up on his YouTube for your benefit in the 787.
Yep, I will endeavour to do that. Like I say, because this model now is really, pretty much there for what you want to do in a sim, especially with the capabilities, like you say, for that sim. It can do holds, and the VNAV is good, and the autopilot functions are there to be able to do what, if anything, is that ATC instructs. I feel like it's about the good time now that the 787 will start getting there now, and because it's been unfortunate that it's taken me so long to be able to get into airline simming, is because I didn't really want to download the 7.3 and get into flying the 7.3 because I'd be mixing up types and stuff like that. And I know you've got the aptitude of flying anything and everything.
These guys,
to do that.
These guys have seen me fly their aircraft. They'll concur with me. I don't have the aptitude to fly other aircraft. It's all good
but yeah. But for me, I wanted to try and stick with the 7.8 and this, and disappointing. And like the members will know, I'm constantly in the chats about 7.8s in other sims and stuff like that, and how either disappointing or they are, or lackluster they are. So I don't want to get involved with a 7.8 model unless I can see that it's worthwhile touching. And the base model, which obviously doesn't involve any more investment than buying the premium edition Microsoft Flight Simulator, it's ideal. What more do you want from a free air? Well, I'd say free in inverted commas. I say it's just the difference in the version of Flight Sim you have, but it's brilliant. So I thought that this is more than capable of doing a good few tutorial videos. So in the very near future, I do hope that I can do that for people, and keep them keep them simplified and keep them short and to the point, so that I can people can dip in and out quickly for their reference for their flight sims.
Well, you won't get a better endorsement from anyone else that knows what they're doing on the 7.8. There you go, guys. Superb.
Thank you.
Now, someone made a good question here. I've just noticed he spotted how the purple bar on the speed tape has shrunk in size. So obviously, it was larger during the initial descent. Is this just the margins to stay on your path and speed have become smaller now?
I'm still trying to find. Obviously, you know what Boeing are like, writing manuals. They make it difficult for you to try and find things. But I do believe that the margins are less because obviously it's still maintaining its path, but at lower altitude. And when you're tight in to the airport now, because now it's only 20 miles off to our right. Mm-hmm. We're close in, so to try and maintain the speed reductions it's going to be doing, and also to maintain that VNAV path and profile, there's less margin for error, and like I say, the airplane is still slippery, so if you were over speeding, it's difficult to reduce. Now, experienced pilots on it, like myself, you wouldn't want to do it all the time. With the 7.8, you can intercept the localizer at 210 knots and get it in easily, even at ferry weight. Ask me how I know, but you don't really want to be doing that sort of speed onto a localizer, especially when you intercept the glide slope at the same time. So that's why you want to be flying accurate speeds and be on path, because the better your approach is and the more stable your approach is, even at this point, approaching 10,000 feet, the easier things later on down the latter stages of the final it will be for you.
Perfect. Now, looking at the live weather, we should have broken clouds at 3,900. It's looking pretty cav-okay to me, so I don't know if there's an issue with the Microsoft Flight Sim weather or the clouds are there, and we're going to have a slight tailwind for landing as well, 5-knot tailwind. Anyway, look, that was the seatbelt sign coming on, I think. That would be because we had the switch on auto still, so I better do some checks at 10,000. So you told me earlier the left and right, and...
Yeah, left and right landing lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, belts will be on, and then we'd also check other things that aren't simulated. So we'll check that we've got VSDs on. We'd also check the RMP has changed to the appropriate stage, which should be RMP 1.
Yeah, we use 0.3, so you go down to 0.1. I don't know if they'll have that modelled.
No, it doesn't look like the RMPs are... Oh, actually it is there, RMP 1. Oh yeah, an actual navigation performance 0.03. So that is that is modelled on the ND, but I don't know if you can set levels of RMP there. But, yeah, that's one thing we would check in our approach procedure. And then obviously we'd check, we'd be setting, we're down to an altitude, so we'd set the QNH as well.
Okay,
off
cool.
Of standard.
Yes, we're now down to 300, so I think in Microsoft Flight Simulator, if I push B, oh no, it's still wanting to set standard. Well, I'll set it manually, 1014 now. Perfect. And it looks like we're at the right position here, we're almost downwind, it'll be about 6,000 feet we want to be here. And then turning on the final, so the height looks right. And it's doing 240.
Yeah. So the next thing it's going to do, if you have a look at your speed tape, it will reduce you at some point to.
Will there be a decel point on the ND as well, or?
This is the thing we were looking at the last time you streamed. There should be along the path, the magenta line. There should be little green dots with speed markers. So there's not like a decel point as such, but it's got like points where it's telling you it wants to reduce speed. I'm not sure why it's not showing them there.
Well, we've got a restriction at Beggy to be at 220, so...
Beggy 220 is fine, yeah, because you can burn off the speed in the base leg. So.
Disabled with style, thanks to the membership. He says, hi Simon, Mike, great stream, great aircraft, really eager to dress the 7-8 in Norse Atlantic colours and fly Oslo to Heathrow. Well, you'll be able to soon. I'm sure there'll be some repaints of this.
But I was actually looking on the marketplace the other day, and there is a good few packs, individual packs for the 7.8-10 with various airline liveries in them. So do have a look at those
cool.
packs if you wanted the Norwegian or any other one in that fact. But they are there. I've seen them.
So there is Copenhagen Airport, the Fly Tampa scenery I purchased for today's stream as well. So it's all accurate. It does look very good. And we get a bit closer up. So turning downwind here. Yeah, I think it doesn't have the green dots, but it did command a lower speed approaching a Beggy to 220, I think. And unlike the 7.3, it will bug below the up speed, won't it? And the flap speeds.
Yeah, so that is the only difference. So the 7.3 has lots of gotchas, but that's the only good thing that it will not let you do. But the 7.8 has lots of things to protect you, but it won't protect you from that. So it's the inverse of the 7.3. So it will reduce speed below your flap bug speeds. So at this point, what we would do, we would open the speed window to prevent that, to mitigate that. We'd open the speed window and then start controlling the speed in that way. But yeah, you will. The aircraft will reduce you to the point that if you don't do anything about it, obviously you won't have the flaps there.
So it's very similar to our procedure here. So now, obviously, I've taken control of the speed. Well, the MCP and speed control, but it will stay in path now.
Yeah, it'll still stay in path, but you've stopped it from reducing speed itself.
Speed. So if I push that back in, you can still see it's commanding 240. And now, obviously, it will accelerate to 240, but we'll follow Mike's SOPs. And I think I'll select flap 1 now, as we're approaching sort of a base leg. Does that sound good, Mike?
Yep, flaps 1 on base is good.
And we'll bug the flap 1 speed, and again, it will stay in path. What was I was going to ask something, and I cannot remember what it was for the life of me now. It'll come back to me. I was looking at the flap speeds. They're quite high, aren't they, for all the flap settings? So it's quite, 180 knots of flap 30. Ah, yes. These are the MPS scales. So this is the same. So that's the glide slope diamond and the localizer diamond here.
Yeah. So it's all as I would expect it to be in the real aeroplane so far, except for the green dots with the speeds.
Yeah. They are missing. It's complied with the 4,000 feet or below. It's a beggy. There's no automatic heading bug update, is there?
No, there is not, I'm afraid.
So it's not quite
if you press the button that you think would do the job, all you would do is go into heading select.
So there you heard it, Airbus pilots, don't do that. So me now, for me personally, I'd like to go to vertical speed and sort of stay on the glide path. I mean, VNAV usually does a good job, but I should think for today we'll just...
Yeah, I would, in real life, I would do the same. I'd go vertical speed now and probably do a 3-degree rate because we're on the glide there, and we're in a perfect speed, perfect position to do a really, really good, nice, capture of both at the same, and a CDA, you're capturing both at the same time.
It's done a really good job, hasn't it?
It's impressive. Like I say, if you just let the airplane, until air traffic control gets in the way, the airplane does a great job on its own.
Perfect. Cheers, Martin. Thanks for popping in. And as I said, if you have any questions, I know I've not been quite so interactive with chat today. Just give Mike a chance to give as much information as possible. But please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'll get back to them as well. And if there's any tricky ones, I'll ask Mike to answer them. So I've gone to flap 5, and the configuration for gear and is gear down flap 20 later.
Gear down flap 20, that's right. So you can go flap 5, then gear down flap 20, or what I like to do for a bit of finesse, I go flap 15 and go 160 knots.
Okay, I'll do that. So I'll go to flap 15 now. I'll arm approach. So localizer glide slopes armed, and I've just used VS to... There we go, localizer
look at that.
Perfect.
Brilliant. That is what we call a perfect CDA, get a few smiles from the other side of the flight deck if you do an approach like that where you capture both at the same time.
Right, so we're now
the 7.8 does a good job of maintaining 170 knots on final with flap 15. So sometimes airplanes will ask for 160 to 4. Sometimes we might, if we can be bothered, ask for 170 to 5, and it does it beautifully. And we continue the low drag approach, 170 to 5 with flap 15, and then once we get a little bit lower, or we then come to the point where we need to reduce speed, we'll go gear down flaps 20 at that point.
Someone's pointed out we've not done the checklist, but I'll quickly flick through that. We've done a descent, descent approach, altimeters, and then you obviously click through this as pilot monitoring, but that's where it comes into sort of single pilot ops and a desktop sim. It's a bit trickier.
That's right, yeah. So like I say, it's all logic based. So the landing checklist is, when you call for the landing checklist, it should already all be green, and all you have to say is landing checklist complete.
Perfect. And your gear down flat 20 point usually?
What are we on the DME there? 6 DME. Yeah. Well, you could go now. Yeah, for comfort, if you wanted to go now.
So
sometimes we could leave it before.
Straight to
I know Copenhagen's
20.
quite Copenhagen is quite low, so yeah.
Just to show you guys, look, we've gone from 15 to 20. You actually have 17 and 18 in between. Do you often use those on the line?
Those are takeoff flap settings, so that's why they're marked slightly in a smaller font and indented, because they're takeoff flap settings. You don't call for those on approach.
And we're at flap 25. I've set VREF +5. The wind's doing something a bit funky here. 300 at 22.
I was just going to explain something very quickly with the HUD symbology. When the flight path vector, I don't know if you noticed there, it went dashed. That's because because of the crosswind. The flight in real life, the flight director is actually, and the flight path vector is off the screen. So when it's slightly off the screen, it goes dashed, but you still maintain what it's telling you to do. But if you wanted to see the full width of it, because it's obviously you've got the speed tape in the way, if you went decluttered mode, it would go back to not being dashed, and it actually would look like it was in somewhere else.
Something like that.
So decluttered mode is good for crosswind landings, because in decluttered mode you also get the runway lines as well.
It's and the symbology looks accurate. I mean, it
is very accurate. Yeah, bit gusty there by the looks of it.
Oh, tailwind's coming.
Nicely. Yeah.
Right, well, wish me luck, Mike. So I'll turn on yoke cam, and I'm going to leave the auto throttle in.
That's right.
Okay.
Might feel weird for you, but leave it in.
It is. Right, I've disconnected the autopilot. I am instinctively looking at the PFD and the flight directors here. Oh my god, that rate of descent was a little excessive. Right, I'm now looking outside. But essentially the same, you'd be putting the dot in the FPV to fly accurately.
So you put the FPV where you want to put the airplane, basically. And look, interestingly, how the dash line and 3-degree line on there was basically in line with the PAPIs.
Oh, oh my goodness me. I think that was a bit of a firm one. Right, reverse.
That was alright. That was alright.
Roll out. Oh, I think... Oh no, I've got idle reverse. Oh no, I think I've got some reverse thrust there. 100. And what's below the localized deviation? What's that on the head-up display?
Your auto brake disconnected for some reason there, so...
Okay.
That's why, because that is your speed reduction. So basically, when you've got auto brake, say you had auto brake 3 set, that little chevron that's pointing to the right, that little V. That's your deceleration. That's your deceleration.
That is
so you know.
So cool.
So you can tell when your auto brake was on. But I knew your auto brake wasn't doing something right, because I know we'd set 2 or 3, but your deceleration was well below max manual braking. So
that is so cool. The little chevron, so it shows you exactly what the auto brake's doing, or your manual braking as well.
Yeah. So that's your speed vector, basically. So if that, I should have pointed it out during the speed reductions and increases in the flight, but you've got like a speed error tape, and a which is like a little bar above the flight path that goes above the left wing of the flight path vector. And basically, to correct for speed, if you're going too fast, the speed error tape will be a little bar extending upwards from the left wing of the flight path vector, right? And what you want to do is to reduce that error, is you reduce thrust, or the airplane will reduce thrust so that the speed vector, which is that chevron dancing up and down, that chevron will then in equal measure be below the flight path vector to balance it out. When it does that, you'll know that speed error will reduce. What you don't want is a situation where the speed error and the speed vector are both on the same side, because that means you're going either too slow or too fast, and you're slowing down or increasing speed. What you want them to do is the opposite. And when you see that, so for example, like I say, the speed error bar is above the flight path vector, you want the speed vector vector chevron to be below it, because that will show you that the trend is that the airplane will slow down and reduce the error.
That's so much to know.
And when you're on speed, like you are now, you're neither accelerating or decelerating. There is no error bar, and the chevron is pointing at the flight path vector, or in this case, the airplane symbol.
And if I brake slightly, you can see it sort of.
Yeah. So you can tell when you're taxiing downhill, uphill, because the speed error will be showing you that.
Amazing. Now, one thing that you wouldn't obviously have felt there is the handling, and a lot of people are commenting on that. Looks like the handling isn't too great when you're looking at yoke cam. For me, a lot of aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator do feel unnatural. I mean, I don't know. You don't have the yoke, the Boeing yoke, do you, Mike? But
I don't know.
I mean, I think you'll be able to comment when you download and install this, and even try with your joystick or whatever. It is, I find it unnatural in certain cases in handling, and I found it quite twitchy there, especially in the rudder on the rollout. But it could be an element of fly-by-wire there. But the PMDG handle's a bit funky in that regard as well.
Naturally, the airplane is like I said at the start, the airplane, because of the fly-by-wire, it's very responsive, and if you over-control it, it can be jittery. But I think there's a combination of them trying to simulate the fly-by-wire control mechanics and feel of it, and also a bit of simism as well. So it's kind of compounded and made worse by the fact that the sim might not be quite there. And again, they have to cater to several hundreds of different kinds of controls that you might have for your home flight simulator. It's difficult to get right. So I'll give them that, but you know, if it is jittery, it's probably because they've simulated the fly-by-wire system quite accurately, but it is a sensitive airplane in real life.
Well, we're going to taxi straight through this van. I'm going to go for Charlie 39. Which I think is a wide body sort of stand coming up here on the left. Now cleanup can't be too dissimilar to what I'm used to, so I guess flaps up.
So it'll be flaps. Yeah, so it all happens quite quick because like I said, the 78 is a big computer. It does lots of bite tests and self checks and stuff like that on the taxi in, and a lot of the time it won't start them until the speed brake is stowed and the flaps have retracted. And then about 45 seconds after the flaps have fully retracted, it then completes one of its checks. And if I think one of these computer self bite checks, if it doesn't do it for 2 or 3 sectors in a row, if it can't do it, it brings up quite an annoying error for the engineers to be able to have to deal with, because they then have to do it manually, whereas the airplane can actually do it automatically. So if we forget to do it, or especially on a short taxi in, if it doesn't get enough time, we have to just sit and wait before we shut down. Otherwise, it will just pass on the problem for the next guys.
Yeah. So all the faults you get are always little electrical gremlins or computer gremlins, and the Max has the new mate light, which monitors a lot of systems, and we've had a few issues with the mate light being illuminated, and that could be a whole host of different reasons.
Yeah.
Right, I've turned on the APU. I've done essentially the same flow as I do in the 7.3. I've got the APU up and running, and we'll just get a beam. This is where it's a bit difficult to to drive. Brakes are off or on, and that's it. So I've done the flaps up, flight directors.
So what would happen now is, the weather radar would have been turned off on the way in. All-terrain radar would be off. Auto brakes off and reset. That's okay. Flaps are already up, so that would have been done on the way in. Obviously, we'd have switched the strobes off. And then what we would do is the parking brake would be set. Captain can then switch the engines off.
Perfect. And the APU's up and running, so it automatically switches to the APU on bus.
Automatically switches on buzz. Yep. And then what we can do, if we go to the overhead panel, the FI would do this in my company. So the seatbelt signs would be off. And then we'd go through the hydraulics and fuel. So going from left to right this time, so opposite to the way we started. Left electric hydraulic switch to off, then C1 off, and then the sensor 2 off, and then the right electric off, and then in any order all of the fuel pumps off, and then the beacon will come off. And then coming down to your center panel, the flight directors would then come off. Transponder 2000 standby, stow the heads up display, and then obviously EFB, they're not simulated, close the flight on that, and that's it.
Perfect. 2000.
And then shut down quickness.
We'll do that as well. So we'll flick through those. So shut down hydraulic panel we set, fuel pumps off, flaps up, parking brake set, fuel control switches cut off, and then it's the secure checklist, which I'll imagine everyone's off now.
Yeah. So if we imagined everyone's off and we wanted to shut it down completely to secure it. So from memory, I turn the IRSs off. I turn the battery off.
Perfect. Oh, so that's not the last thing you do.
No, battery come.
Would it be on
battery
external
comes
power
off.
now as well, I suppose?
Yeah,
or-
if there was external power, we can put on the external power, but
it's
it's
not
basically to we turn the battery off, obviously to protect the battery. So if we lost complete power, it wouldn't drain the battery.
See on the
So-
7.3 that kills it, but now we've turned the battery off. We still seem to have.
Yeah, we've still got power, yeah, because
Okay.
the APU is running. Yeah. So the APU is running. So then next thing we do, we turn the flight deck door power off so that we can open the flight deck door can be opened from outside. See, and then we turn the emergency lights off. Flick it up.
Yeah.
There we go. That's off, and then packs off. Left pack and right pack on. And that should be the secure tech list complete. So if we have a look at the secure tech list, obviously in the real airplane it would be green.
Yeah.
But we just get IRS's, emergency lights, packs. It can be modified as per company, and then if you really want to switch it off, you can turn the EPU off, and then the whole thing would go dark.
There we are. So we've got 5. The fuel burn we did on the test sector earlier was pretty good. It was spot on and accurate to what the sim brief was saying, which is pretty good. So yeah, well, I'll turn it off, and that's gonna obviously probably takes. There we go. Takes a minute or so.
Yeah. There is a process that goes through, and obviously with you have to. So what we would do is we'd have hopefully ground power. We'd switch off the APU and we'd disconnect. There is like an electronic shutdown, and because there's more tests and stuff to do, there is actually a wait of about 20 odd minutes or so. This is why this is an engineer thing, where we would. It takes about 20 minutes for all the power to come off to be able to then switch off the airplane completely, because it's all the little checks and things that it does. So it actually takes a lot longer to switch it off to cold and dark than it does in real life in the sim. Sorry, and the same thing for starting it up from cold and dark in real life. It's a bit of a longer process as well. Like I say, on the line, the engine, the airplanes, they hardly ever get switched off. As soon as we bring the airplane in from a long haul inbound sector, it gets an hour and a half turnaround, and it's more often than not straight back out for another long haul sector. And the same thing again. The airplanes just, we have high utilization of the 787, so they just very rarely do they ever get fully switched off.
They only ever make any money when they're in the air, huh?
Well, exactly that. Yeah. The only time an airplane costs an airline money is when it's on the ground paying parking charges.
Exactly.
So.
I've got a couple of questions coming in here. People are asking, will I consider changing to the 787? And my operator's probably going to get you to fly the 78 now as well, maybe. I'll take a couple of questions here. One for you primarily, Mike, from Thaddeus. What do you just a general quick overview of what do you think of the plane in general? Is it worth people who have Microsoft Flight Simulator the standard edition upgrading to deluxe to fly the 787?
Well, I'm not sure how much it is. That's personal preference to go from standard to deluxe. But if you wanted to just go straight from standard to deluxe just for the 787, I would say for me, yes, it is worth it. But I wouldn't just do it just for the 787. I'd do it for all the other airplanes, because there are a lot of other great things you get with the upgrade as well. But if you just wanted to judge it primarily just on the 787-10 alone, for just the cost of the upgrade, I'd say yes, maybe. But again, it's not got the same fidelity as something like a PMDG 73 or a PMDG 777 back in FSX or P3D days has. It's still got a little ways to go yet, but this is a marked improvement from the original release 7.8.
There you go. Well, like I said earlier, this is from someone who's got 1,500 hours on the 7.8, been flying it for 5 years, so you can't get better advice than that. And would I do it? Yes, I think I would. I mean, I know there's another 787 available in P3D. I don't know much about it. Have you tried that one, Mike, or seen it? Or
I've only ever seen, because I don't have P3D, but I have seen some of the pictures of the guys in the membership that do have it, and I've seen interesting screenshots, especially because the PFD is the correct right way around on the first side. I said, well, that looks good. But other than the screenshots with the guys, and again, somebody just mentioned there the quality wing 7.8, that looked good. I actually did give some feedback indirectly to the Quality Wings dev team and submitted some I took some pictures of the heads-up display on the line, which apparently made their way to the Quality Wings dev team. And there was a little bit of feedback from me via a member who then submitted it via the forums, I think, to the devs. And I don't know if my feedback led to any changes there, but I do think indirectly have a feeling that it might have done. So the quality wings I've heard is a really good one. Again, me personally, I've not used it. This is the only good quality 787 I've seen and used. And like I say, a few years ago, I actually did do a Discord full tutorial through Discord for the membership using it, but there was very little I could actually do because of
it was pretty basic, wasn't it?
It was just basically a model that looked like a 7.8 that I could basically. I'd have been more effective with the Paper Tiger and just done a Discord video call, to be honest. I just used the airplane as a Paper Tiger and told what switch did what without being able to actually press it. So, but now we can actually press switches on there, so
that actually works. And lastly there, Robert S said, I should consider expanding my channel with Mike. I will definitely rewind the stream because I could only watch the screen from the background. Great stream. Well, I will perhaps do more with Mike, no doubt, but I must remind you that Mike is hoping to upload some videos in time. No exact time scale on that, but please do subscribe to his YouTube channel. His name is, well, if you drop a comment in the chat, they'll be able to directly, I think, subscribe to you there, Mike. But also you can follow Mike on Instagram as well, Mike Sierra Charlie. He's showing nice and fun great pictures on his Instagram as well too. But no doubt we'll do some more things in the future. First time I've ever done anything like this, Mike, and I had a lot of fun, and your input was sensational. I think I haven't learnt as much about one aircraft in such a short period of time as well. So, and as Pedro said, we should try a shared cockpit. That could be very interesting.
Yeah, if we can make that work for like a multi-crew, especially maybe on VATSIM or something like that, or if you want to do across the pond in future. We can talk a little bit more about. We'll have plenty of time to talk about things if we did across the pond in the 7.8, maybe Dublin to New York, something like that. Definitely we can have a good chat about much more in-depth things on the 7.8.
Sounds really, really good. Well, I'll wrap things up here anyway, but again, Mike, thank you so much for your time. We've had a lot of people watching. I think at one point, over 500-600 people watching as well. The feedback is already looking really good as well. So as I said, everyone in chat, please feel free to follow Mike, and if you have any questions about this stream, feel free to put it in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer those questions, and I'll forward any to Mike, and maybe he could answer some too if he sees any as well. But Mike, thanks a lot, buddy, and I'll catch up with you in a few more minutes anyway. I'll give you a call back, but thank you so much for your time.
Perfect.
And
thank you, everyone.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, buddy.
No problem at all.
See you in a bit, bud. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Perfect. Right, there we go, guys. That's it for today. As I just said to Mike, so much respect for him for coming in here, giving him his afternoon off, 3.5 hours, and he went into so much detail with the 787 today. And as I just said, I learned so much about the aircraft as well. So I hope you could play this back, enjoy it there. We got much more detail than I was expecting. I was fascinated with some of the things that Mike was telling me there. Is there a replay? I didn't start it there, so we are going to end it here today. But that was the first time I've ever done any sort of collaboration. I'll look into doing a few more in the future because I think that was something a little different. Really enjoyed it as well. So I might have a chat to some other streamers and see what we can do. So yeah, as I've said many times, please follow Mike on YouTube and on Instagram as well. I know, really appreciate that. And thank you all for watching as well. I know I haven't been able to interact with some of you in chat as much as I usually could, because obviously we're accommodating Mike and all that amazing information he was providing as well. So I did miss, I think, a couple of donations coming in. Thank you to those. The alerts were muted for today's stream, which I should have highlighted at the start as well. But thank you again for all your continued support. To the members, to everyone that views the channel regularly, thank you very much for your support. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with the latest content. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to smash the thumbs up button, and enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Take care, guys. Bye bye.